Good afternoon. My name is Alice Korovesi. I'm from the EU-GCC Clean Energy Technology Network, and I would like to welcome you on the webinar Energy Transitions in the Context of Climate Change and Sustainable Development. This webinar is organized by the European Union Delegation to the State of Kuwait and the State of Qatar, the EU-GCC Clean Energy Technology Network, and the Qatar National Research Fund, QNRF. I will provide some practical information for the participants. This event is recorded. As you have listened to the automated message, the recording of this event and the presentations that are going to be presented will be available for all upon the completion of the event, while during the event you will be able to place your questions either at the chat box or at the Q&A box, which is available at the bottom of your screen as you can see it. I would like now to give the floor to Dr. Hatem Meni from QNRF, who is the Master of Ceremony, to present you the lineup of speakers and the outline of the event. Thank you from my side.
Thank you, Alice. I'm Dr. Hatem Meni, Senior Program Manager in Social Science, Arts and the Humanities in the Qatar National Research Fund, QNRF, here in Qatar. I will play the role of Master of Ceremony during this ROS webinar joint event. So welcome everybody and thank you for joining us. We, QNRF and EU-GCC, are happy to meet with you this afternoon to talk about energy transitions in the context of climate change and sustainable development. To be frank with you, we do not want another conference on energy transition. There have been so many in recent years in the region and around the world, but rather an in-depth discussion that could help the numerous actors in this field to work together in a concerted way and to be able to help the countries in this region to make as successful as possible their respective transition. We all know that this is a difficult exercise, among other things, because the transition requires the participation and contribution of many actors, sometimes who not used to work together, as well as it affects many economic sectors at different levels. It is complicated because also technological choices are often intertwined with social and economic considerations. But before going to that in-depth discussion, let me welcome our esteemed invitees, Dr. Irina Gusashenko, which is the political official at the EU delegation in Kuwait and Qatar, Dr. Abdulsattar Al-Tai, Executive Director at QNRF, and Mr. Frank Wouters, Director, EU-GCC Clean Energy Technology Network. And thank them for joining us this afternoon and for accepting to give the welcome remarks. So to start, I will give the floor to Dr. Irina Gusashenko. Dr. Irina, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hatem Meni, Senior Program Manager in Qatar National Research Fund, for your introduction. Dear Dr. Abdulsattar Al-Tai, Executive Director of the Qatar National Research Fund, dear distinguished experts and participants of this event, on behalf of the European Union Delegation to the State of Kuwait and Qatar, and Ambassador Christian Tudor, I'm glad to participate and support today another interesting initiative strengthening EU-Qatar partnership in the field of energy transitions. I would like to thank the Qatar National Research Fund and of course the EU-GCC Clean Energy Technology Network team for their cooperation in organizing such an important event. Please allow me to tell you a few words on EU-Qatar relations. Bilateral relations between the European Union and the state of Qatar have been gaining momentum over the last years. In 2018, the European Union and Qatar signed the cooperation arrangement aimed at strengthening both political dialogue and sectoral cooperation. Since then, a number of EU-Qatar initiatives have been launched, such as, for example, EU-Qatar Informal Human Rights Dialogue and the EU-Qatar Aviation Agreement. Moreover, in the field of clean energy, we strongly support exchange and cooperation initiatives with Qatari stakeholders. The EU-GCC Clean Energy Technology Network, funded by the European Union, provides a flexible platform for sharing of know-how and expertise, aiming at meeting mutual sustainability and energy transition goals. I would like now to provide some highlights of the energy transition pathway in the European Union. In addressing climate change and green recovery challenges, the European Union is leading global developments and is taking initiatives to drive forward the international energy transitions dialogue. The European Green Deal is our strategy for sustainable growth. It also serves as our roadmap out of the crisis. With the European Green Deal, we have a clear sense of direction and momentum. Both translate into clear targets to reach a 55% reduction in emissions by 2030 and to reach a carbon neutral Europe by 2050. And while the pandemic might have changed our approach and our planning, it hasn't changed our level of ambition. The energy transition is at the heart of the European Green Deal. We are concentrating our efforts to transform our energy system and to reach our vision for a net zero Europe. Research and innovation are critical for delivering the solutions and system transformations. We must increase the efficiency of the whole energy value chain and integrate sustainability and circularity throughout it. Moreover, green investment is a strong mechanism against climate change. Green investment can and must drive our recovery from the pandemic. The European Union has already set its plans for the energy transition. We launched strategies for better integration of our energy system, for hydrogen, and for offshore renewable energy. To put these strategies in effect, we are revising the EU energy legislation to achieve our target for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions of at least 55% by 2030. In particular, the Fit for 55 legislative package will be unveiled this summer. Providing a sneak peek at what the Fit for 55 proposals will contain, I can say that we will strengthen the EU emissions trading system, present a carbon border adjustment mechanism, and update the Energy Taxation Directive. We will also propose new carbon dioxide standards for cars, new energy efficiency standards for buildings, new targets for renewables, and new ways of supporting clean fuels and infrastructure for clean transport. We plan also to reduce methane emissions in the energy sector and also revisit the legislation for competitive decarbonized gas markets. Let me now move to cooperation and exchange with Qatar. Climate change and recovery are global challenges. Therefore, we want to join forces with our partners to act now and together. We already have long-term partnerships with the GCC and Qatar. Our energy cooperation efforts are always aligned with and complementing energy strategies in the region. We therefore see great potential for cooperation, for exchanging views and enhancing our understanding of these strategies, for sharing practices and lessons learned, policies and technological approaches. This webinar today provides a flexible platform to discuss among experts and researchers developments in the EU and Qatar. I wish you an inspiring conference and fruitful discussions throughout the afternoon. Thank you for your attention. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Irina, for your kind words. And I retain the following keywords from your speech, hoping that we will be back later to discuss them. International green dialogue, system transformation, green investment, partnership, and cooperation. Thank you very much. And now I will give the floor to the Executive Director of QNRF, Dr. Abdulsattar Attas. Dr. Abdulsattar, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Hatem. Thank you very much. You hear me loud and clear?
Yes, clear.
Okay, thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dr. Irina Kozalchenko, Political Officer at the EU Delegation to the State of Qatar. Distinguished guests and speakers, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and warm welcome to today's Research Outcome Seminar. On the outset, I would like to express my profound thanks to our partners, the EU-GCC Clean Energy Technology Network, for joining QNRF and organizing this second seminar in less than 1 month. This time to address energy transition in the context of climate change and sustainable development. On the outset, I would like also to say a few words about QNRF, which was established by Qatar Foundation back in 2006 in response to the need for the development of a thriving research and innovation ecosystem. And hence our prime mission is to provide funding opportunities for original competitively selected research to help Qatar develop a sustainable, diversified economy and improve the lifestyle of its citizens and residents. Now at QNRF, we firmly remain committed towards empowering researchers to tackle the national grant challenges faced by the state of Qatar in different domains, including the energy security, water security, environmental protection, managing social dimensions of change, and sustainable urbanization, amongst others. Throughout the history of mankind, human societies have managed to smoothly transition away from one fossil energy source to another. Our ancestors moved from wood to coal, then to crude oil over the last century, and later on, the mid of last century, to natural gas, which has been recognized, the natural gas has been recognized as the cleanest among the fossil fuel. I stress among the fossil fuel. However, the journey for looking for clean and sustainable energy sources was intensified over the last 2 decades, where countries, especially in Europe and across the world, are working to replace fossil fuel with zero carbon energy produced from the renewable sources like wind and solar to help to halt the ever increasing global warming, which is attributed largely to the carbon emissions from burning fossil fuel. To stop this detrimental effect of global warming, the world community, through various United Nations agencies and institutions, has launched a series of mitigation steps, which culminated in 2 very important milestones back in 2015, The first being the Paris Agreement, which aims at limiting the global warming to 2 degrees Celsius below the pre-industrial level. And the second being the adoption by the United Nations of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or as they called SDGs, which aim to end poverty, protect our planet, and ensure that by 2030, all of us enjoy peace and prosperity. Now, focusing on the SDG 7, the 7 of these goals, so the SDG 7, is of particular interest for us in today's seminar, as it focuses on the concerted global effort to ensure energy transition in connection with all of the other SDGs, as recognizing these linkages is important to effectively implement them. Generating renewable energy is an important step toward energy transition. However, this is only one aspect of the change. The transition is long-term investment opportunities and aims at the transforming of entire energy system. The crucial point is to meet climate targets and while securing investment across the entire value chain, which entails generating renewable transportation, infrastructure transition, and distribution network. Now, coming back to QNRF efforts in funding research projects in the field of sustainable energy, we are really proud to share that over the last decade, the 10 years of QNRF lifetime, we had provided around 650 million in funding of more than 130 exceptional research projects through our different funding programs and initiatives. These projects include participation, the participation of researchers from academia and public and industrial stakeholders, covering all the full spectrum of upstream and downstream technical processes. Moreover, we also have projects that are exploring the socio-economic impact on the transition of the transition process. Throughout our unwavering effort, we have focused our attention on the energy footprint and consequent climate change and environment impact, while taking into consideration Qatar's commitment towards international agreement, including the Paris Agreement. The outcome of several such research projects will be presented during the course of this seminar. Dear colleagues, climate pressure and depletion of scarce natural resources, such as water in Qatar, are associated with the rapid demographic and economic growth, as well as unsustainable consumption and production pattern. Responding to this, Qatar has started adopting sustainability policies and ecological innovation in key sectors. This shifts toward promoting sustainability, including measures, the measures like the reuse of water, regulation for energy performance in building, encouraging energy savings, adaptation of CO2 mitigation measures, investment in renewable like solar power, and promotion of research and education to formulate cutting-edge solutions to solve the ever-growing environmental challenges. The word drive to sustainable energy, as promising as it is, and we are all for that, would also have some dramatic bearing on the economies of the oil and gas producing countries. And in this regard, I would like to make reference to one of the conclusions of of one of our QNRF funded projects, which forecasts the following. I leave this food for thoughts for you. Reaching the 2-degree objective may imply that a third of oil reserves and half of gas reserves could remain unused. This means that the Middle East, for the Middle East, 38% of the existing oil and 61 of the natural reserves would be left stranded. If this forecast proves to be true, this will mean that the GCC countries are going to face a real paradox. They need to invest in short time in their oil and gas infrastructure to manage the stranded assets, but at the same time, they have to finance new businesses outside of oil and gas and continue participating in the important role of the global economy of the energy transition. I just want you to really take this and how we can make a genuine bridge without really impairing on the economies of the GCC countries and other oil and gas producing countries. Anyway, in closing, I would like to thank you all once again for attending these seminars, and I look forward to the ensuing fruitful discussions and interaction. Thank you and God bless. Thank you. To you.
Thank you, Dr. Abdel Sattar, for underlining the immense role played by QNRF in all the research fields, and in particular in energy and in transition issues. Thank you for this inspiring speech. Now I will give the stage to Mr. Frank Voters. He's he's the director of the EU-GCC Clean Energy Technology Network. Frank, the stage is yours.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hatem. The network highly appreciates joining hands again with QNRF in the seminar on energy transitions, which is of course a hot topic. And we've heard from Her Excellency Irina Guzachenko what Europe considers elements of the energy transition, which is framed in the EU Green Deal and the Fit for 55 package, among many other things. And this brings me to an observation, namely that the concept of energy transition is a bit like modern abstract art. In a way, it means different things to different people. Although we all agree that there is an overarching and urgent need to stop using our atmosphere as an open sewer where we dump CO2 at will, we also recognize that there may be and there will be different pathways to achieve the same objective, and Dr. Abdel Sattar already alluded to that. It is therefore that we call it energy transitions and not energy transition, because there's not one silver bullet solution that solves everything. It's our task as a community, and this is what we're doing today, to exchange views, experiences, and find common ground, discuss challenges, but also find mutually beneficial opportunities to tackle one of the most dangerous things in modern history, namely climate chaos. And the opportunities are plentiful. Today, we will hear about how, for example, modeling can support solar PV and more sustainable urban development in the region. But we're also witnessing, and this was part of the discussion we had before with QNRF, a groundswell of ideas to produce hydrogen and clean fuels based on hydrogen from the region, which has tremendous promise. The network supported a study carried out by DII Desert Energy and Roland Berger, and that was released last week. Now, that study assessed that up to 1 million new jobs can be created in the GCC, and the revenue potential could be $200 billion per year. This shows that, yes, there are challenges, but we should not lose sight of the opportunity. And to reflect on what Dr. Hatem also said in his opening remarks, this should not be an academic exercise, a mere talking shop, if you will, but it should be a door to action. And I'm looking forward to an inspiring workshop today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank, for this speech. thank you all for this inspiring remarks, welcome remarks. And I think Dr. Mustafa, that the speech that we just heard set the tone and the path is clear now for introducing the first session, strategies and roadmaps towards a sustainable energy transition. Dr. Mustafa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hatem, for your kind introduction, and thank you for our distinguished speaker at the welcome remark. It was very inspiring. I think we will have a very useful and interesting discussion today. I'm delighted to moderate this first session dedicated to strategies and roadmap toward a sustainable energy transition. Let me just introduce the topic. As we are all witnessing that clean energy has become a major growth sector as countries around the world have increasingly looked to transition to low emission energy systems. The EU and the Arab region, particularly the GCC, are both committed to progress toward the low emission and sustainable goals. However, this shift needs to progress so substantially if they are to meet the Paris Agreement and sustainable development goals. This means that the energy sector particularly should undergo a deep transformation over the next few decades, including decarbonization of all the sectors of the economy, not only the energy sector. We know that we will need better management of our energy system if we are to ensure a smooth transition that is inclusive and sustainable. This is also a consensus that the pace of energy transition will not be uniform across all the countries, and that will call for strengthening international and regional cooperation to mainstream the low carbon transition regionally and globally. And this is one of the aims of this online event. And we will try to shed the light on some aspects of the activities that the EU and the GCC regions are undertaking to achieve this clean energy targets, including the EU Green Deal and the different GCC country regions, particularly in Qatar, and the strategies. Also, it aims to discuss the challenges and the opportunities, economic opportunities. In addition, during the panel discussion, we try to highlight the effort that both regions are undertaking to foster their collaboration in the clean energy and climate change domain. So the agenda of this first session comprises two parts. The first one is dedicated to the presentations delivered by our esteemed speakers, and the second, two question and answer from me, the moderator, and I will try also to pick up some questions from the audience. For this first session, we have with us distinguished speakers. First of all, we have Gauri Singh, Deputy Director General of IRENA, International Renewable Energy Agency. Ms. Gauri, welcome. And we have Dr. Haris Dukas, who's Associate Professor at National Technical University of Athens. Dr. Haris, most welcome. Professor
Hello,
Alan Hori, Qatar GCC expert for overseas, Switzerland and HEC, Canada. Last but not least, Dr. Ivanis Stipulidis, Renewable Energy Consultant Engineer, is one of our EU-GCC Clean Energy Technology Senior experts. So for this first session, I would like to invite Ms. Gauri Singh to deliver his first speech. It's very interesting to have with us IRENA. And Gauri is a career bureaucrat with over 30 years experience in policy formulation, implementation and policy advocacy in the field of renewables, energy, sustainable development and livelihood. Before he has been elected as a Deputy Director General of IRENA, he also worked at IRENA earlier and had the chance and the honor to be with her in her team as a Director of Country Support and Partnerships, and was responsible for regional and country level initiatives. She spearheaded the partnership with regional energy and economic organizations. So Ms. Gauri Singh, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mustafa, and thank you so much for inviting me to this jointly organized webinar by EU-GCC Clean Energy Technology Network and QNRF. And I think the very interesting points of view that we've heard by the speakers in the initial part of this webinar have really set the tone and the direction. And what I plan to do is to take this very distinguished audience of experts and all our participants of this webinar through some of the highlights of the work that IRENA has done in the world, in our flagship World Energy Transitions Outlook. The flagship publication is going to be launched at the end of this month. But I'd like to present to this group here the highlights of this work. So I do want to start by saying that all of us understand that the science is very clear. And according to the IPCC special report on 1.5 degrees centigrade, energy emissions must reach zero by 2050. What that means is that 45% of the global greenhouse gas emissions must be reduced by 2030. And we all understand that energy, in fact, contributes to almost 80% of the anthropogenic carbon dioxide emissions. So the energy sector is obviously very important. But what has really been happening since the Paris Agreement? What we see is that between the period 2014 to 2019, the carbon dioxide emissions energy-related carbon dioxide emissions actually increased by 1.3% annually. And last year we all know was a black swan event where there was a decline, but we see this trend, and it's very troubling, because if we are to reach this very ambitious climate objective of maintaining the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees centigrade, then this will be a decade of action, and this is this very narrow window that we have of making a difference. So the reality, as we know, is also becoming quite clear. And despite the ongoing health crisis and the economic difficulties, what we did see, and we are seeing, that countries, regions, cities, companies are continuing to make very ambitious commitments to climate change and net zero strategies. According to our analysis, the 6 pillars which are going to be really important for the energy transition, as you can see in the slide, are going to be renewables, energy efficiency, electrification, and green hydrogen, also the modern bioenergy with carbon capture. And there will be a small role for fossil fuels, but that role will get reduced substantially. But if we are to look at what has really been happening in the renewable space, then in last year, I think much to the delight of the renewable energy community, what we saw is a record high of deployment, where the deployment normally is about 200 gigawatts every year, and last year there was this jump, and it reached nearly 260 gigawatts, and around 82% of the total installed capacity. So the trend is very, very it's very interesting, and it's very encouraging. And if we have to move along this very narrow window that we have in front of us to create the pathways of action, then we have a fighting chance of aligning to the very ambitious climate objectives. So if I can have the next slide, please. So, fundamentally, the energy transition can of course be a great vehicle for decarbonization, but it's also a great vehicle for the new economy that's much more resilient and much more inclusive. So if we see, if you're looking at the baseline scenario, then the baseline scenario here, we are representing by the commitments that have been made by countries, which are contained in their national strategies, in their announcements and the commitments in the NDC. And the 1.5 degree scenario that we've created is actually based on, it prioritizes the technologies that are available today, but also takes into account critical technologies that are under development and are being innovated on so that they can be deployed at scale by 2030. So this actually, if you see these the projections that we have put out, what we see is that electrification will become the main energy carrier in 2050. The electricity generation from renewable energy moves up from 25% to about 90% in 2050. And within this, the variable renewable energy component would be about 63%. What we are expecting is from the 2,500 gigawatts that is currently deployed, we are looking at a deployment of about 27,700 gigawatts by 2050. And what that also implies is that the rate of deployment has to really get expedited. There is, as you can see, there will be a small share that we've projected for natural gas and for nuclear, and also for oil and for coal. But this is a share that gets drastically reduced. Let me also highlight that at IRENA, we feel that hydrogen is going to be a key solution for industry, especially the heavy industry and transport. And we do expect that green hydrogen would be a major energy carrier and would become cost competitive with blue hydrogen by 2030. If I could move to the next slide, please. So as we all understand that the financial markets speed up change. They bring the future forward because they reallocate capital to the growth sectors. And what we are seeing is a trend that that's probably going to pick up momentum as we move into this decade. On the slide, what we're showing is that the Standard & Poor's Global Clean Energy Index went up substantially, and the Standard & Poor's Index for energy, which is more fossil fuel heavy, as you can see, lost considerable space. Now, that is an indication of how the financial allocation of capital is moving, and it is a sign that the financial markets are also now keeping pace with the commitments that are being made at the political level. If I could just move to the next slide. So what is clear is the direction is clear of the energy transition, but it's really the speed that will make all the difference. And from the current scenario, what we expect is that about 98 trillion US dollars is the kind of investment that is going for energy transition. Whereas what we have projected is that we will need about 131 trillion US dollars for the 1.5 degree scenario to get fructified. And we all understand that monies and funds put by the government either as short-term stimulus or as critical financial incentives can leverage private investment by a factor of 3 to 4. So these really must be used very strategically to guide investment decisions in the direction of energy transition priorities. And if we could just move to the next slide, please. So, energy transition is not, the discussion around energy transition can no longer be limited to technology choices and mitigation efforts. It has to be also, the policy frameworks also have to be discussed so that we move into this energy transition, which is just, and it has the capacity to take people along. It's more inclusive. We all also understand that at the core of the policies that really make the difference are policies that are directly supportive of deployment of renewables. But equally important are also policies that help, that enable integration of variable renewable energy into the grid. The grid, as we know, is in most of the countries is very centralized. We have the grid from the era where we had large thermal or large plants generating energy at one location, and now we've moved into a much more decentralized way of generating our energy. Along with that, the policies have to also enable energy transition across the board. So while there is a lot of space that has got picked up around renewables being deployed for production of electricity, but the other end use sectors we know are still lagging behind in their adapting more renewables. Also, the labor market measures have to be taken to create a well-trained workforce so that people can find jobs. And I would now like to just go a little bit more into the GCC. And in the next slide, we do see the GCC countries are showing their commitment to energy transition. And I think, as Dr. Abdul Sattar, the Executive Director, QNRF, just mentioned, Qatar, for example, is focusing a lot on energy efficiency and on the efficiency of water consumption. And of course, they have an ambitious target for solar as well. But as you can see, the other countries in GCC are also not far behind in terms of creating their ambitions around the green energy deployment. Could I have the next slide, please? So, the very strong PPAs that the GCC countries offer have really led to prices that were not imaginable just a few years back. And this has obviously created a strong commercial pressure on looking at comparative costs. And I think this is one of the large components which is driving renewables across the world. Can I have the next slide, please? So the investments, as we can see from the slide, are increasing, but I think we all agree that a lot more needs to be done, as is quite evident. And I'm sure in this webinar we will hear discussions on the strategy of how investments can get scaled up. And for the last slide. So there are immense benefits for GCC countries to deploy renewables, as is clear from this. There are jobs which Dr. Wouters talked about, jobs that will get created, skilled jobs in this sector. There's obviously a lot of benefit in terms of emissions that get saved, and also the fuel savings. So I would really end my presentation here, and I look forward to hearing the other speakers and also interacting with the participants. So thank you so much.
Dr. Mustafa, you're muted. We cannot hear you.
Sorry, thank you very much for very insightful and informative presentation. I think there is a lot of work behind this, and I think it's very interesting to see also those scenarios and have a clear idea about our future. Thank you very much, and I will invite the next speaker in this session. So Professor Dr. Haris Lucas, Associate Professor, the School of Electrical and Computer Engineering, National Technical University of Athens. Dr. Haris, the stage is yours. Thank you very much. And the title of Dr. Haris' presentation is the European Green Transition. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mustafa, and it's really glad to be here today and to have all these very interesting and insightful presentations, discussions. My presentation will focus on the European case and the European green transition, and it was already from the beginning from Dr. Irina, our political advisor from the EU delegation. It was already noted that before the pandemic, Europe has decided already from December 2019, has agreed on a new sustainable growth strategy, the European Green Deal, which includes many different domains and aspects, from the zero pollution Europe, farm to fork, which means agricultural and rural areas transformation, circular economy, climate neutrality. It was the first continent that announced that we want to be climate neutral till 2050, sustainable transport, and of course, energy plays a crucial role in this respect, and also financing the transition is really important. And what is also clear is that this European Green Deal has to be also a social deal, which means that we need to create the conditions to secure that it will be a just transition that will leave no one behind. And then already from 2019, most European countries announced very ambitious plans for the power sector, and specifically for the decarbonization of the power sector. And you can see here that most countries have already announced plans for phasing out coal and lignite power plants within the next years till 2030, and some others from 2030 till 2035. Most of them will try to be climate neutral in the electricity sector before 2015, and the ambition is to be within 2030 for most of them. Then came the pandemic, and then the discussion about the recovery, and again within the decisions there was a very clear direction that this 1.8 trillion that was announced will help to rebuild the post-COVID-19 Europe that will be green, digital, and resilient. So this, for Europe, it's a huge amount of money, very important package, which includes the multi-financial framework package for 2021-2027. It's almost more than 1 trillion. And then the next generation EU, which is the new addition for the pandemic, for the recovery, which is 75,000 billion euros. And the clear direction is the green recovery. And interesting to say that for this 1.8 trillion, more than 30%, something like 5,000 billion, will be devoted particularly to the green transition. And this amount of money until 2027. And also that research plays a critical role in this respect, and approximately 100 billion euros will be devoted for research, mainly through the well-known Horizon Europe program. So here you can see the next generation EU, and particularly, and the specific components. The most critical is, the most important, let's say, is the Recovery and Resilient Facility, the RRF, which has 360 billion loans, and then 312 billion grants for the member states, and then additional amount of money for different type of mechanisms like REACT-EU, the Horizon, InvestEU, the Just Transition Fund for the regions that will have great difficulties since they have coal, lignite power plants there that will close, and the Rescue facility. Now, if we can have a more deep dive, let's say, into the RRF, then we have 7 flagship areas that can be eligible for financing, what we call Power Up, clean technologies and renewables, renovate energy efficiency of buildings, recharge and refuel of transport and charging stations, the connect rollout of rapid broadband services, the digitalization of public transportation, the data cloud capacities and their scaling up, and of course, reskilling and upskilling, which is critical to support green and digital skills. So let's say 35% is devoted specifically for climate investments and reforms, green, and a minimum of 20% for digital. So these are the 2 main areas that will be funded. And if we check, we already have something like 23 plans submitted for the member states, and 3 of them already approved for the European Commission. If we see what has been submitted and what are the key areas that will be financed, then we can see that renewable energy generation, transmission, distribution, and energy storage are the most important things that will be financed, with renewable energy generation something like 30% of the total amount of the plans that are submitted. And we have other important, let's say, sectors like green hydrogen, charging and recharging stations, and of course, building renovation, which is very critical and important since in Europe, energy efficiency first is a key principle. Then, as already again noted, the pandemic didn't change the direction, and in fact, it increased the, let's say, the intermediate milestones. So we have a new European climate law agreed by European Council and European Commission, which is in fact the implementation law for the Green Deal. And then, of course, we have the carbon neutrality till 2050, but we have more ambitious targets for 2030, which is really important, 55% net emission reductions compared to 1990. And then we have new instruments and mechanisms like scientific advisory board and other additions that will help to create specific sector-based roadmaps. And we are currently, within this month, probably in the next few days, we will have the upcoming package, the Fit for 55. So how to achieve the 55%, which means revised climate and energy laws for the Energy Efficiency Directive, Renewables Directive, land use change and forestry regulations, and the effort sharing and emission trading system. This will be announced within the next days. And then we have already, for each member state, climate laws. So many member states have already announced their national climate laws, and some of them are under preparation for announcing them. Now, one critical aspect already discussed by the previous excellent presentation from Irina is the financing aspect. And here, again, within Europe, the effort is to direct investments towards sustainable projects and activities. Reforming the financial sector is critical to meet EU's climate and energy targets. And of course, the current pandemic has reinforced this need to make our economies, businesses, and societies, in particular, including health systems, more resilient against climate and environmental shocks. And this is why there is a significant effort for what we call EU sustainable financing. Already from June 2020, and with a new announcement for the previous month, we have the EU taxonomy, which is a clear taxonomy and a common language with clear definitions of what is sustainable. So we have for Europe a classification system establishing a clear list of environmentally sustainable economic activities. So what are in fact the activities that will be financed till 2050? And then we have the activities, but we need also to check the companies if they are sustainable or not. So we have a new proposal for a corporate sustainability reporting directive, what is called as sustainability reporting. And with this proposal, companies within the next years, not immediately, some are already included, but most of them within the next years will need to report not only the financial information, but also information related with their environmental performance, their social performance. And this is what we call the ESG reporting, environment, social, governance reporting. So what we are trying to do is that we will create indicators in each one of these three dimensions, and the companies will need the majority of them, the big ones, the small ones, and only some exclusions for some very small companies will be available for reporting the resource management, the emission reductions achieved, the environmental accidents, risk mitigation actions that they take into consideration, social things like health and safety, human rights, community relations, supply chain monitoring, and governance, which means compensations, accountability of board leaderships, and visions. This is an effort that is currently undergoing, and the idea is till 2023 to have it applied to the majority of European companies. So to wrap up, very critical is to strengthen the European research area to promote competitiveness and optimize the investment impact, since we need the recovery and all this huge amount of money to increase European competitiveness and, of course, the impact of our to the region, and also improve the flow of money towards sustainable activities is critical. It was already illustrated that we have a gap in order to achieve the Paris Agreement, so we need new tools. This is the taxonomy, this is the ESG, and this will enable investors to reorient investments towards more sustainable technologies and businesses in order to make the EU what it's the vision, a global leader in setting standards for sustainable financing. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harris, for this very interesting and insightful presentation, shedding the light on the Green Deal. There's some aspect that we can learn from Europe. So thank you very much. And I will call Professor Alar Hori, Qatar GCC expert, RDC Switzerland and HEC Canada. Professor Alan Hori is currently the CEO of RCDs, Professor Emeritus at University of Geneva, and adjunct professor of HEC Montreal. He has been a professor of quantitative methods at the graduate business schools and others positions, and now he's trying to find out solution and also scenarios, options for the GCC countries in shifting their energy landscape. So Professor Allen, the stage is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. What I will present now is part of the outcome of a research project, which is based at Qatar University, which is led by Professor Ahmed Badran, and which is funded by QNRF. I am myself associated with this project as a member of Ordexis, which is a consultancy based in Geneva, Switzerland, and which is helping in running the project. Let's go next slide. Others.
Hello, Professor Allen.
Yeah, he probably has an internet connection.
There is a problem?
Yeah, and now we can see the slide, but yeah, your connection is not stable. But let's proceed. Thank you.
Yeah, it's marked. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know why. Okay, in 2018, the Shell Corporation produced a set of scenarios concerning the future of the global energy sector if the goals of the Paris Agreement should be met. It was interesting because it was coming from a major oil company. And this picture, which is taken from this report, summarizes the current state of the global energy sector dominated by coal, oil, and gas primary energy sources. So oil is in red, coal is in black, electricity is in blue, and you see here that is okay, the current situation. This picture shows the transformation of the energy sector, which reaches a net zero emissions regime by 2070. Fossil fuels are still very present in this global energy system. This is interesting aspect of the scenarios. And to reach the net zero emission CO2, direct reduction technologies are introduced massively, and in particular in the form of biomass energy with carbon capture and sequestration. And I have put some frames over there around the technologies where you have this biomass, which is used in electricity plants, and the CO2 is captured. And this is the interesting feature, which permits oil to be still very present in 2017. Very recently, the International Energy Agency has produced a report, Net Zero by 2050, a roadmap for the global energy sector with the aim to achieving the 1.5-degree warming objective of the Paris Agreement. In this scenario, which is quite impressive, CDR technologies play also a very important role to balance that in 2050 already 7 and more gigaton of CO2 are captured to balance industry and transport emissions. What is important for GCC countries is the fact that in this report, for example, the IEA indicates that oil and gas producing countries could see their income divided by a factor of 5, which is enormous. And faced with this threat, of course, of stranded assets, the GCC countries should react with plans to adapt their economies. In both these scenarios,
Professor Alain, can you hear me? I think we have lost the connection with you.
Come on.
Professor Alain, we missed the couple.
No. You want to get back to the previous one?
This one, please. Yes, because we haven't done anything. So if you can repeat, please.
Okay, so I said here that in the report of the IEA, it was indicated that oil and gas producing countries could see their income divided by 5, which means that it is a very important threat. And faced with the threat of stranded assets, actually, the GCC countries should react rapidly and have plans to adapt their economies. This is what they said. Now, next slide. Do you see the next slide? Hello?
Yes, Professor, we can hear it.
Okay. So, as I said, in the journal The Economist, in July 2020, there was an interesting prospective article, What if carbon removal becomes the new big oil? And in fact, they were reckoning that 2 methods have emerged as the most effective ways to remove CO2 from atmosphere. One is DAC, direct air capture, which involves trapping carbon dioxide from the atmosphere by sucking air through an absorbent material. And the other is bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, BECCS, where the absorption is done by trees and crops as they grow. That biomass is then burned for energy, and the resulting carbon dioxide is captured. Either way, CO2 is stored underground, permanently removing it from the atmosphere. So this is what I call CDR technologies.
Professor Alain, we are still facing problems with your connection. As discussed again, can you please close your camera because your internet connection is not good. Probably this will help.
Okay, I see what I can do. I see what I can do.
Yes, to close your camera, please.
Okay, I have to.
Can you please close your camera because it's taking from the bandwidth and continue without your camera open? Probably it will help.
So I continue. But do you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen, and please put it in a full mode, and please close your camera before before the connection, the internet connection. Yeah, that is better. Can you please continue now to see if it's better?
I do. Okay. Okay. So did you hear that one when I said that currently the cost of DAC is estimated at around $600 per ton of CO2 sequestrated, captured and sequestrated. It could go down as low as $200 per ton through learning by doing, if we, of course, have a massive deployment of these technologies. BCCS is much less costly. This is a technology that appears in many IPCC and other scenarios and the SKY scenario. But it has a long-term opportunity cost because of the vast plantations it requires. And so there is even a logistic challenge for that. This is the situation from the cost. Okay, so now next slide. Actually, the development of these CDR technologies requires a new industrial organization. The oil companies are actually very well situated because they have expertise in putting fuels back underground as well as taking them out. And a new business model would appear. It consists in selling fuels in markets in which there is no feasible alternative, such as long-haul air travel, at net zero prices, which includes the certified capture of an amount of carbon equivalent to that given off by the fuel's combustions. This is called carbon leasing. But to do that efficiently, this requires the creation of an international carbon market in which carbon removal credits could be traded. And this is an important issue. In our project, so we have decided to evaluate the economic importance of development of CO2 direct reduction technologies for the long-term climate strategies for the Gulf countries. And there is this paper recently published in Climatic Change, which has been co-authored by all the members of our team. The model that we use to do this assessment is based on actually the use of a general equilibrium computable economic model, Gemini E3, which is used to model the economies, the macroeconomy of the whole world and different regions in the world, including the GCC countries. And we assume that there will be a global safety cumulative emissions budget, SCEB, which will be allocated among different coalitions of countries, the GCC being one of them, and the existence of an international emissions trading market is assumed. So we summarize actually the forthcoming negotiations with this simple problem of sharing safety cumulative emissions budget, which is the one which is consistent with the goal of reaching 2 degrees Celsius warming. And then we assume that the different regions will be in competition in the world in actually deploying CDR technologies and supplying emission rights on this market. And these will be strategic variables. and they would be competing on on this world market. And what we obtained with this modeling approach was first this interesting observation. In this graph, on the bottom, you have the budget, the remaining safety cumulative emissions budget. The one which is compatible with the goal of 2 degrees C threshold is here. It is 1170 gigaton CO2. And this generates, and this is here, welfare loss, which is expressed in percentage of the discounted sum of GDP worldwide, which is a little bit higher than 2%. But if you go to the budget, which is compatible with 1.5 threshold, and this comes from all the studies done at IPCC and others on climate models. If you go at this level, which is around 400 gigaton, then worldwide, there is a welfare loss expressed as 14% of discounted GDP sums, which is huge. So this shows already that all this discussion about 1.5 goal is something which is actually, okay, in view of this model, very difficult to achieve actually, because the cost will be huge, could be huge. Now, looking more precisely on the impact of introducing CDR in this picture. Without CDR, we have a need to abate more. And of course, worldwide, the zero net zero emission is reached at the end of the century, not in 2015. This results actually in a significant welfare loss of 3.8% of the discounted GDP over the whole period. If we let direct air capture and BECCS being used, however, the worldwide welfare loss is reduced to 2.8%. So without these CDR technologies, the price of CO2, which can be evaluated from the model, is equal to $4,000 in 2100, which corresponds to $775 in 2030, a very high price. And this shows the extreme stringency of the climate target when the CDR technologies are not available. With CDR technologies, the CO2 price is $1,292 in 2100, which corresponds to $480 in 2030, which is already quite higher than what is currently envisioned, but which is nevertheless more reasonable than 775.
Sorry, Professor Alan, if you can conclude, please, because we are out of time. Thank you very much.
Did I take more than 15 minutes?
Yes, maybe 20 minutes now.
Okay, okay.
Sorry, so, because it was this problem with the internet.
Okay. So I will make a conclusion. Conclusion. In market-based approach, so I said, if without CDR, we have 3.8% of welfare loss, 2.8% of discounted GDP if we introduce DAC and GCC. Actually, the direct air capture would enable GCC countries to obtain additional emission permits for sale on the international market. This reduces unburned oil and reduces the loss of oil and gas revenue for the energy exporting countries. And so that technology is central to the design of a fair climate agreement. It allows GCC countries to exploit a comparative advantage associated with their large natural gas endowments and high CO2 storage capacities. And policy implications from this study, we can see that building a common strategy of GCC countries and oil producers to act more strongly at the COP level is important to defend their point of view, support an emissions trading framework and global carbon pricing, which is essential. Use their carbon capture and usage sequestration technologies to exploit GCC countries' CO2 storage capacity. This is a very big asset to have that. Develop actively CDR technologies, in particular DAC based on gas. Use solar energy efficiently, of course, in a smart multi-energy system, and develop hydrogen export through the ammonia option, since hydrogen has been identified as the energy carrier that could replace also hydrocarbons in transport and heavy industry. We have a part of our program which is exploring this. That was the conclusion, and I thank you very much. And I apologize for the problems with connection.
Thank you very much, Professor Alan, for your very insightful and informative presentation. I think those scenarios and simulation are very interesting and can help also and assist the decision makers to take the right decisions and toward a clean future. And now I would like to call Dr. Ivanis Stipulidis for his presentation. Dr. Ivanis is a chemical engineer with a PhD in solar energy and has been actively involved in renewables since 1978. Since 2018 in Kenya, he now, I think, held the position of director of this Renewable Energy and Climate Change Research Center at the Technical University of Mombasa. So congratulations for this new job, Dr. Ivanis, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm very honored and happy to be in this very prestigious event, and thank you to the organizers for the invitation. I'm speaking to you from Nairobi in Kenya, and something tells me I'm going to have the same problems as the previous presenter. So Ms. Alice Korovesi offered kindly to do the presentation for me, and I will turn off my camera and you can see me later, okay? So next slide, please. I will attempt to give you my understanding of the required energy transition and the climate crisis times we experience. And these are broadly the three areas I will focus. We must appreciate before we start that any infrastructure transition is a huge task, a task that needs solutions, policies, effort, funds, and above all time. And this is more so for energy, which is the most fundamental infrastructure for the existence of humanity. And time is a luxury we don't have. And this is a race against time to achieve the energy transition before we exceed the set global warming temperature by IPCC. Next slide, please. I'm sure I don't really need to dwell much on the issue of climate change because nowadays it's common knowledge, especially in a professional audience like this one. This is the last official UNFCCC report, the 1.5 special report, emphasized where we are and where we're going unless we take some measures. And every report produced after that confirmed, underlined, or at least suggested that things are actually a little worse. So we have to really pay attention to science and we cannot ignore it. Next slide, please. If we fail to keep the temperature rise to 1.5, then we really need to remember what 2 degrees Celsius will mean. And this really depicts the disasters and consequences of that climate disaster development. And of course, we must state to the above that the health issues, because it's not presented here, and of course, climate migration, which is a big issue, and actually climate migration numbers will surpass those of conflict and war. And this is the driver of the urgency of the energy transition. We have to really provide the energy transition sooner than the actual infrastructure affords. Next slide, please. It's very important to maintain focus on the danger of economic recession as a result of the climate crisis. But change is achievable and affordable, as about 1.5% of global GDP would fund the clean energy transition. Some experts believe it can happen even before the predicted times. And we have to remember that the Stern Review back in 2006 predicted that it's cheaper to tackle climate change than to suffer the climate consequences. Let us not forget also the recent emblematic IEA report, which emphasized the need for annual renewable electricity installations to be tripled by 2030, among other things. So total green investment seems to be a must and not a choice. But it has to be a just and equitable transition from fossil fuels to green energy, as underlined by QNRF Executive Director in the beginning of this event. The transition must produce value and prosperity, not recession and poverty. We will not avoid one catastrophe by creating another one. We must move forward together. Next slide, please. The first speaker presented Irina's view of the global renewable situation. I will take a different view, which is really confirms the other. 2 days ago, the RENI 21, which is the International Renewable Energy Network, presented its annual Renewables Global Status Report. I have the honor to be a contributor for my country to this report, so I take pride in that too. This slide shows, first of all, that the investment in renewable energy sources for 2020 is clearly in favor of renewables at the rate of 70 to 30%. So we're going well in that direction. Next slide, please. It's also clear that more renewables are added than fossil fuel new additions, new capacity additions. So that 2020 it reached 83%, and that has been going on for the last 6 years. Renewables, there are more renewables added than any other source of energy. Of course, this has really been helped by the fact that the costs have been dropping, as was already mentioned. I will just give you the percentages. Solar PV dropped 85% from 2009 to 2010, 2020. Concentrated solar dropped 68%. Onshore wind dropped 48%. And offshore wind, which is the next coming in, is 54%. So these reductions in the cost of the technologies is really helping investment. Next slide, please. Viewing at the, let's see, the individual technologies, solar added 139 gigawatts to the last year, reaching 760, while wind 93 to reach 743. So solar surpassed for the first time globally in total installations wind. Offshore wind reached 35, and as you should know and keep an eye on offshore wind, this is something that will really take off in the next years. Overall, RES installed 256 gigawatt in 2020, reaching a total of 2,839 gigawatt, which is a 10% increase over 2019. And of course, I don't need to tell you that China is leading in most sectors. Next slide, please. However, and this is a very big however, in the total final energy consumption, renewables only contribute 11.2% in 2019. And that's only up from 8.7 in 2009. We need to understand why this happens, and we need to, in order to be able to intervene and correct it. Next slide, please. This is another way of looking at it, and this is the contribution of renewables in the total energy demand from 2009 to 2019. Only 25% of the increase was made by the renewable sources. Only 25%. The rest was covered by traditional conventional energy sources. Next slide, please. And this is really the reason why this happens, because renewables are very good at producing electricity, but they have not really penetrated the other sectors, such as transport and heating and cooling. This is where they're very weak, and we need to really affect sector coupling and manage to get renewables into the sectors and electrify our industry. This is a huge task that has to be done. And the applications are there. We can really do that. Storage is a big issue. Storage is the key for the higher penetration of renewables. Hydrogen is there, e-mobility is there, biofuels, anything is available, and of course, energy efficiency, that's something we said before. And we have to let's not forget that electric cars are already available. They had a 41% increase last year. So we know that we have the tools of how to increase these percentages, but the percentages are low. We need to move into the other sectors, not just electricity. Next slide, please. So this is overall still to date, almost 80% of the total final energy demand is met by non-renewable sources. And that's something that has to be redressed, reversed, if we're to reach the climate targets and to attain the green revolution we were talking about. And if we go to the next slide, please. Because renewables, as we started saying in the beginning, they are growing, but they are not growing fast enough. They cannot even cover the increase in global energy demand, as we said before. They only meet 25% of that, and that has to be redressed. Next slide, please. So if we're to achieve the targets, we really have to speed up, and speeding up means we have to ramp up renewables 6 times faster. We have to transition to electric vehicles 22 times faster. We have to increase tree coverage by 5 times faster. Phase out coal power 5 times faster, increase use of low carbon fuels 8 times faster, and electrify our industry 1.5% faster. This can be done. We know the total energy investment should surge from 5 trillion to 5 trillion from 2 trillion today, and this can be done. Green hydrogen should be a vehicle for a lot of this effort, and we know that the technology is there in this commercial. Next slide, please. So we know that we need a lot of policy change, we need a lot of funding, and it seems that G7 have picked up the essence of this message, and they're pledging. Of course, at the moment there are pledges. Professor Lucas explained the pledges from the European Union. Total is 1.8 trillion for the Green Deal. Biden has promised 2 trillion for the Green Deal and his Green Deal, but also 3 days ago they promised that they would look to cover the gap of the 40 trillion infrastructure need for the developing world. This is very important because this will also address the SDGs, which were referred to by the director of QNRF. SDGs are very important. We should not forget that we're all moving forward. Nobody should be left behind. Next slide, please. And I think, given what's happening, we should be really optimistic. And why? Because the resources are available and they are abundant. The technologies are commercial and they're here. And I will give you an example of my own country with renewables. This is the beginning of renewables in Greece. In 1982, we built the first wind park, and a year later, the first photovoltaic park. Actually, the first wind park was the first wind park of Europe, because by chance, it was the first time that somebody put more than one turbine for the same purpose. That was 1992, and I was somehow involved in that beginning as well, because I was a young engineer at PPC then. Next slide, please. From that start, today, this is the picture of the Greek renewables market. We have over 7 gigawatts of renewables installed, and there is a pipeline of 60 gigawatts of projects waiting to be permitted and constructed. And this doesn't take into account the great interest for offshore wind, which is really the latest, not for many countries, Greece included. Next slide, please. The transition to a 100% renewable world can be done. We have the technologies and it's doable. Of course, it will take a lot of effort, but we can do it. And last slide, please. You will allow me to end on a very personal note. In 1978, I started my PhD in solar energy in sunless Leeds, Yorkshire in the UK. I was investigating a photogalvanovoltaic solar battery cell, which converted light directly to electricity, stored it in an iron salt solution, and produced hydrogen. The energy conversion of that experiment was 0.0006% in 1978. And today, global hydrogen project pipeline expected to exceed 300 billion by 2030. How can we not be optimistic about the bright renewable future? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ivanis, for this very straightforward presentation. And I think we learned a lot from you and the other esteemed speakers for this session. I think it's good to have, an overview and also the option that the decision makers, the developers, the investors have in hands, so they can, invest. They can also set up the right policies and the regulations, also the favorable conditions for investing in clean energy. So with that, I will shift this session to the questions. So I have a couple of questions because we are running out of time. So I will start with Gauri. Gauri, in your opinion, what is needed to enable faster and wider adoption of green energy transitions, especially in developing countries? How have to developed countries have been contributing to this transition, and what IRENA is doing? What is the role of IRENA in increasing the pace of energy transition? Thank you very much, Gauri.
Thanks, Mustafa, for this question. I think to further energy transition and also attract investments which are needed both in the short term and in the long term, while ambitious climate and clean energy targets are essential both at the national and subnational levels. But in addition, what we are seeing now is the political commitments are getting more, ironclad in the nature of laws that are getting passed. So we've seen that in Germany, and we are seeing that in many other countries, that then starts defining the way the political system and the economic system will respond to this kind of a very strong commitment. What we are also seeing is that ambitions from developing countries have been raised in the NDCs, but they need to actually go beyond the power sector and to cover the other end-use sectors, as was also mentioned by the professor in his presentation. So while I do need to say here that while targets are critical, but they need to be, they can only be effective in a more holistic kind of a policy framework where we need to be looking at deployment policies which provide the market pull, along with enabling policies such as creating the framework for system integration of variable renewable energy technologies. I also want to just add here that since we were also talking about SDGs. So SDG 7, as you know, focuses on clean and affordable energy to all, and the total flows reached about 21 billion in 2017, which is nearly double what it was in 2010. But only about 12% of these financial flows went to the least developed countries, which means that a lot more needs to be done. And talking about IRENA, you know well that when IRENA started work in 2011, we had, the capacities have now gone up to about from 1,300 gigawatts to what they were in 2011 to about 2,800 gigawatts. I think what's interesting is that while IRENA has membership across 165 countries now, I think it has served as a very important hub for providing the analysis that policymakers need and to create that kind of a momentum by getting policymakers together to speak on their common intent. So I'll stop here.
Thank you, Gary, for this very useful clarification. And I think we have to learn a lot from Irina and from you and for all the team that is working under you. Let's ask Professor Allen. As you mentioned, there is a need to create this carbon or emission trading system. It is essential to put this in place now.
Yeah, it is. Okay, not exactly now, but it is essential to have such a system if we want to foster actually the development of dark technologies, in particular in countries like GCC countries, because there must be a way to value actually the capture of this CO2, and this is something that will be beneficial to the whole world actually to reduce the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere, and this is actually this will be a new resource. A new resource will be just to put CO2 in the ground and to gain the value for that, because you will be able to sell permits. And so there will be a new resource actually, and a new resource that will be, there is no need to transport it, to export it. This is a financial resource. This is fantastic. But the market is essential.
Yes, but how we can start putting this in place? What is the first step?
The problem is actually discuss this whole thing at the COP and to have actually an approach where one shows that there is an important value in getting the CO2 put in the ground, and that the countries like the Gulf countries have an advantage to do that. They have a know-how, they have a possibility to store, etc. And then it has to be explained and to be discussed with the other countries and to see what is the way to put that into effect, and having the market is certainly the most efficient way to implement that.
I agree with you, Professor. I think this is the right way, and the CO2 removal. Even if we have, this CO2, as many of the experts explained, that we can have, another parallel markets of the fossil fuel. So if we can phase out fossil fuel, but on the other side we can take advantage of the emissions. But we have to, create this market, and we can learn from Europe. From Europe, they have a lot of insight on this and experiences. So maybe I will move to Dr. Harris. Can you give us some insight, because you elaborate a little bit on the EU Green Deal, but how about the main components of this Green Deal or Recovery Green Deal program?
Yes, thank you. The situation is as follows. Now the countries are submitting the action plans on how they will spend the money, this 1.8 trillion euros. Then it is approved by the European Commission, and then project per project, based on the way it is maturing, we start having the flow of money. But still we have till today 3 plans, among which Greece, that are approved, and we will start. It's Greece, Spain, and Portugal. We have already 23 submitted. So then we will start with per project to ask for money. One key issue here is also that we have grants and loans, and the idea is to, let's say, mobilize the private sector. So to create the possibility of growing national added value per euro that is coming from the European Commission. Thus, it is important per project what is also evaluated to check if this amount of money will be tripled or in any case multiplied based on the interest of also the private sector. And of course, it is critical to have a clear added value per country. So it has to be risk-based, not, for instance, increase to create new lock-ins to infrastructures that might create difficulties in the future, but to be a forward-looking process that will enable a just transition with competitiveness and good jobs for the next generation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Rice. I think it's very challenging, as I know you have many countries and many stakeholders. So how we can deal with all those actors at the same time, and you have to push all the countries also not, and there are some local circumstances. How we can deal with this and push all those countries? Is there any regulations or law that's imposing, you know, those targets, or there is some flexibility?
First of all, to become a carbon neutral continent is a once in a lifetime challenge, very difficult one, and needs many different things to work together. We have also legal requirements, and this is important, that we have a European climate law. So legally binding targets and clear, also legally binding targets per sector and other obligations. Moreover, each country is currently preparing or has already a national climate law. So why is this important? Because through these approaches, each citizen might go to the court for instance, not a healthy environment, for not an environment in his place that he is living that is very polluted. And then the administration or even the government has to pay for creating better conditions. Thus, what I would like to emphasize is that in Europe, it's let's say, a citizen-centric approach. So the aim is it is already said many times, to have a transition where each citizen is in the heart of the transition, and it's becoming also a key component. This is why we have acronyms like prosumer. So how each citizen can become not only a consumer, but also a producer. So to become a prosumer. To make the story short, it's very challenging. There are mechanisms and monitoring and targeting mechanisms in Europe. There are laws already available or under development. And of course, the next 2 or 3 years, because the RRF, the Resilience Recovery Fund, has to be exploited till 2025. So this means that the next 2 or 3 years are really critical if we will make this important, the most important, I think, in European history in terms of the amount of money instrument, a success or not.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rice, for clarifying those aspects. It's very important to know all those details and mechanisms that Europe is taking forward to reach the 2050 climate targets. So for Professor Ivanis, what do you think? Are we on the right track regarding the climate urgency, or we have to speed up, all those programs and invest more in clean energy? What do you think, Professor?
Well, I think this is really the $1 trillion question. I think I said it before, that really time is the most important parameter in this equation. We know what has to be done. We have the technologies, we have the resources. We should, and I repeat that because I like what the executive director said, we need an equitable and just transition for everybody. We don't want to criminalize anybody. We don't want to punish anybody. Either we all move ahead or nobody moves ahead. Okay, but we don't have the time to sit around and talk about it. Climate change is running away. So 1.5, it's predicted that before 2030, there'll come 1 year where we will have 1.5 degree temperature rise. So, and also this is, all this action has to be front heavy. We can't really wait for 2029 to apply it. So having said all that, think of what's happening. How many discussions are ongoing on the transition? Everybody's talking about the transition. Something will come out of it. Will it come on time? Well, I'm an optimistic man. I've been, as I said, 42 years in this path of renewables. Yes, we will. I'm optimistic. I think we will.
So thank you very much. I think it's time is for actions and having less talk. And I think we talked a lot during those 3 or 4 last years. Now we have the Paris Agreement, we have the sustainable development goals that Gauri mentioned. We have to push forward all those agenda, and we have to, maybe the country have to also help each other. Yes. Because the situations in many countries, they don't have enough resources. They need also help. So Gauri, what do you provide as a mechanism to help those developing countries?
So,
please, thank you.
Yeah. So, Mustafa, at IRENA, not only do we do a lot of analytical work, which serves as the basis that policymakers can do their long-term planning and the decision-making on. But also what we have at IRENA is we also undertake many regional initiatives and country initiatives. Very recently, we have also now a new division at IRENA that's looking at project facilitation. And I think this is just to go to show that a lot of emphasis is also being done on the work on the ground. So it's not just policy analysis, it's not just getting tools for long-term planning, but also focusing on very real work that can happen and is happening on the ground.
Thank you very much. I think it will be very helpful for those countries to move forward their agenda and project in the ground. So thank you very much. So in 1 minute, Professor Allen, do you have a clear message to convey to our participants, to our speakers? Can you unmute yourself, Professor Allen?
Yeah, I just have to insist that the DAC technology that I was referring to is actually a natural gas-based one, and so it uses natural gas to produce the heat source and the electricity needed to run the machine, and then it captures the CO2, and the gas from the CO2 from the gas is also put underground. So this is a system which is actually wonderfully designed for a country like Qatar, because this gives a new way to use gas and to produce possibly the fuel with zero carbon content, actually, because you could also use the captured CO2 with hydrogen and produce a fuel with zero carbon content. There is really a very interesting possibility offered by that. So But I am sure that there are people already in Qatar that are studying very closely this type of technology. I'm quite sure.
Thank you very much, Professor. Very insightful. Dr. Ivanis, in 1 minute, what do you think about Africa? Is there possibilities of cooperation with EU? And in Kenya, for example, you are leading the center. Are you willing to engage with other countries at a regional level, for example? Do you have some ideas about this?
I think Africa, especially me, but generally Africa is more than eager to cooperate. And I think I will come back again to the SDGs, starting from SDG 7, which is really cuts across all other SDGs. Africa and the whole world should cooperate. I think the lesson, and if I can just say 3 words, we have global warming, we need a global response for a global solution. Nobody left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Harris, from your side. Or from
I think not about Africa, I guess. So I think in my point of view, the most critical parties we have, it's an organization with QNRF, and they have yes, you can hear me. So it's important to, from my point of view, also for QNRF to investigate opportunities also for cooperation within this sustainable financing concept. They have very significant capacity and capital, and I think it's really interesting to see possible opportunities for cooperation based on the current effort of EU with the EU taxonomy, the environmental social governance criteria, and the way Europe is currently trying to reform the funding and to reorient the capital towards sustainable investments that will lead us towards neutrality till 2050. And I think that this forum, this specific webinar and training can help us in discussion in this respect.
Something happened with Dr. Mustafa. He disappeared. But in any case, I need to ring the bell because the session should have been finished a few minutes ago. Dr. Mustafa, you're here again. Can we conclude, please, the session to proceed with the second one? Thank you.
Yes. No, it was the last round of questions, and I would like to thank all the speakers for their time and availability and for this very interesting discussion and interaction, for their insightful and informative presentations. Thank you very much, Gauri, Professor Alan, Dr. Harris, Dr. Ivanis. It was a pleasure working with you, and sorry to bothering you for those questions, but it was, I think, very useful, and hope that also the attendees take advantage of your presence. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon. So, Dr. Hatem, to you. Thank you very much.
It was a very pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Mustafa, for this insightful and informative session. Yes, it was very, very interesting because, you know, all these innovative technologies that our speakers talk about, and all these new ways of using or producing energy are mainly the results of research programs and projects. So the idea now in this second session that we titled R&D and Innovation in the Context of Energy Transition is to listen to the researchers and the outcomes of their latest projects. We called this in our terminology in QNRF research outcome seminar, and the main objective of these research outcome seminars is to inform academics, practitioners, policy makers, private sector representatives, also members of civil society about the main outcomes of projects funded by QNRF under some topics. And today we will talk about energy transition. The agenda of this session includes 4 presentations, and I will let the speakers present themselves accordingly. So I call Dr. Ahmed Badran from Qatar University to talk about his main outcome from the project and PRP, modeling and assessing the transition of low carbon smart economy in Gulf countries. Dr. Badran, the floor is yours, please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hatem. Thanks for the invite and thanks for giving us the opportunity today to shed some light on the project that we are working on. A good afternoon to everyone. So the project that we are working on at the moment is titled Modeling and Assessing the Transition to Low Carbon Economy and Smart Economy in the GCC countries. In the time frame that is allocated to our presentation, I'll focus on, first of all, presenting my research team, and then moving to talk about the objectives and methodology of our project. And I will conclude by highlighting some of the outcomes and the impacts of the project that we have achieved so far. Starting by the research team, we have...
Can you please share your screen, Dr. Badran, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Your presentation is not shared, yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Let me just go back here. I hope it's okay now.
Yeah, it is okay. Just put it in a full presentation mode.
Okay, here we are. So this is my research team. So basically we have 4 PIs plus a senior research.
It's not full mode yet. If you can press the button again.
I think it is in full mode, so...
it's not.
How about now?
No.
On the
sorry, so
the bottom left, you have a button on the on PowerPoint. On the bottom left, you have
if you can go up where it says slideshow, and you can check. Not there. It's next to the transition slideshow.
Is it okay now?
No.
Slideshow over there.
No. Sorry. So what do I need to do? Because I.
Next to home, insert design in your upper line, you go to the slideshow.
Okay.
Next here, yes, and yeah, from the beginning, you press the first button.
Okay, I hope it's okay now.
No, it's not working.
No.
No.
I don't know what's.
Okay, that's fine. You can.
Stop sharing and start again, Dr. Let's try one more time. No. In any case, let's proceed like that. Let's proceed like that. Hope that if you can go down and maximize from 69 to 100%, probably it will be better. Yeah. No.
Okay.
A little bit of 100% because we don't want to lose some of the. It's better.
Is that all right?
let's proceed like that now. And if anything else, and apologies for interrupting you.
No, not at all, not at all. It's I should have done this before. Anyway, so this is my research team. As I was mentioning, we have 4 PIs. We have Professor Alain Horry, and you have listened to his presentation earlier today. And we have Professor Maxime Chancury, in addition to Professor Frédéric Babanou. And we have also Professor Marc Viel and our senior research assistant, Ms. Marwa Ben Laharj. So regarding the research objective, so the overall objective of our research is basically to develop a qualitative and quantitative system analysis approach to assess the future of the energy system in Qatar and in the GCC area, taking into account some disruptive factors, if I may call them like that, which is basically the drive towards the smart cities and smart energy systems in order to achieve sustainability, in addition to what we can call the post-COP21 climate regimes, and more precisely the distributed energy markets and sharing economy, and the way they impact on the global demand for fossil fuel. Moving now to the methodology. So at the methodological level, we basically have a 3-branch system approach to analyze this topic. We start by looking at what we call a qualitative multi-level perspective approach, or a QML. And we have used this approach basically to develop scenarios for Qatar and the Gulf countries with regard to technological progress, new climate regimes, new markets, and some other variables and innovations. At the micro level, we are interested basically in looking at niche innovations, while at the meso level, we look at socio-technical regimes. And at the macro level, we use the QML to look at the socio-technical landscapes. So in addition to the QML, we also use a bottom-up techno-economic modeling tool in order to capture the possible evolution of the domestic energy systems, especially in the GCC countries. And as my colleague, Professor Alain Horry, has mentioned earlier, we use some modeling tools like ETEM, Energy Technology Environmental Model, for this purpose. When it comes to our 3rd branch, which is the top-down macroeconomic modeling tool, here we use this tool basically to measure the changes on fossil fuel demand globally. And as also has been highlighted by Professor Alain, we use Gemini E3, a general equilibrium model to achieve this task in Qatar and in the GCC countries. So some of the main outcomes that we have come up with recently is basically to deal with the importance of using CCS, the carbon capture and storage, in addition to the carbon direct removal technology, as key elements for the GCC countries at the long term to address the climate change issues. We also have come through our work to some conclusions related to the GCC countries and their ability to optimize the welfare cost by implementing the optimal development of the carbon direct removal technologies. In addition to this, and Dr. Alain also mentioned the possibility of having an international market for carbon, to exchange carbon rights. So in addition to this, under the International Emission Trading Scheme, which is we suppose should be in place, the captured CO2 could be a valuable resource for the GCC countries. supposing that there will be trade on the rights related to the CO2. We also focused basically more particularly on Qatar, and here we can say that Qatar could attain a net zero emission based on the optimal portfolio of technologies, including the solar, hydrogen, natural gas, and EV. With regard to the GCC countries, I think based on the results that we have come up with from our research, I think they need to be more active and proactive when it comes to the climate change negotiations. So this is basically the structure of our project. And as you can see, we have 5 work packages. The first one is related to the scenario building. The second one is basically focusing on the development of the techno-economic model. And the third one is basically focused on the macroeconomic modeling process and assessment. And this all feed into our 4th work package related to the regional policy design. And finally, we have work package 5 for management and dissemination. I don't want to go into the details of this section because Professor Alan has already saved me the trouble to talk in detail about the modeling process and the results that we have come up with running our model and simulations. But as you can see, this is the paper that we have published recently, and it is available if you want to read in detail about the results that we have come up with. But here I will just go very quickly through some of the results that we have found from the simulation. And Professor Alan has already covered all those aspects, and we will be more than happy to answer any question related to the modeling and the simulations that we have run in producing this paper. In addition to this paper, we have also a list of publications. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they are here just to show you that we have produced some publications out of this project. Some of them are published, some of them are still under publication in the process, in the pipeline, and there will be out. They will be out soon. Okay. So we have also contributed to this policy brief in the G20 government, and we have our team member, Ms. Marwa Ben Lahrash. She was very much involved in the discussions and in writing the policy brief. We also try to get involved in the discussions about sustainability. So we have also contributed to the sustainability summit in Qatar in October 27-28 in 2019. And here we have our website for the project. It's up and running. I think I might be able to share with you now the project, just hopefully it will work, just to show you. Okay, so this is the website for our project, and here basically we have all the useful informations about the project, about the aims and objectives of the project. If you can see this in the platform now, we also have tools and methods, and here we have this like, you know, it's kind of like modeling game where you can enter different variables and you end up having different results and charts. So it's an educational game basically for those who are interested in trying different variables to see what would be the impact. And in addition to this, we have also some recorded sessions here to train researchers and to train people who are interested in the area of energy transition. And then you can just, you know, click on any of these and then you can start the session. And as you can see, So as you can see, and of course we have different sessions. Okay, so whoever interested in learning about some of the methodology, like for example, or maybe some of the other aspects related to the project, like the macroeconomic modeling, the bottom-up modeling, and how to play the climate game. So it's all recorded and it's all available for researchers and students. So this is part of our data dissemination efforts and the capacity building effort as well. So, okay, so I think I will conclude at this point, and I'll be happy to take questions later. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Badran. We will let the question for the Q&A session at the end. But I noted that you are here reinforced by all your team. Research team.
Yes, that's absolutely,
okay.
yeah. I have a
it
very
will
good
be easy
backup.
for us to pose question and to have answer.
Yes,
I also invite all the our guest speakers to ask questions to our researchers, and they are here for trying to respond to your question.
Yes,
and
all
now I give
questions
the
are
floor
welcome.
to Dr. Khalifa. Thank you, Dr. Badran. Dr. Khalifa,
Thank you.
you have 15 minutes. We are running out of time. So please.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and good afternoon for the rest of the people around the globe. This research is about social economic aspects that Qatar National Research Fund provide a generous fund to complete the second part of the equation, which is the behavioral science, in addition to what they are doing for the hard science as well. Thank you very much.
Khalifa, if you can just put it in a presentation mode, please press either Control L or use the view button at the top. That's great now. Thank you.
Thank you. This project is promoting energy efficiency in Qatar using a field experiment. It's NBRB 923250026, funded by Qatar National Research Fund. Team members that we have is myself, Dr. Alfoldi, Dr. Massimiliano Cabron, Dr. Michael Price, Omar Al-Ubaidali, and Umitro Shatarji. And in fact, the main goal of this research is to estimate the energy demand or electricity demand in the state of Qatar using macro variables, and at the same time, touching the behavior of the people in the state of Qatar as well, as a sample for the GCC countries. Also, we are trying to support the effort of promoting energy efficiency in the electricity sector in the state of Qatar. We are assuming at the macro level, there are few variables affect the energy demand or electricity demand now and in the future. We are testing the impact of the economic activities using the gross domestic product and the rate of change in the population. In addition to that, we are trying to discover the behavioral use and beliefs about the electricity consumption in the state of Qatar. Then we build a scenario-based forecast for the electricity demand in Qatar until 2032. This scenario-based forecast is for the electricity demand, and at the same time is based on the macro variables. Because if electricity demand goes up, CO2 emission goes up. Specifically, we are producing the electricity based on the natural gas, which is, even if it's clean relative to the oil and coal, but still it's a fossil fuel. We have used 4 complementary approach to achieve our targets in this project. The first approach, we call it the econometric approach or statistical approach. After dealing with the data that we have for the 6 economic sectors inside Qatar, we have identified 2 major variables as the macro variables affect the electricity demand. Those are the GDP growth and the population growth. After testing the data using the time series econometrics techniques, we have selected the error correction model that takes the following equation. On the left-hand side is demand on electricity in 6 segments in the state of Qatar: hotels, industrial segment, commercial segment, villa, apartments as well, and the factors that affect those sectors. On the right-hand side, the lag of those electricity consumption, YT-1, and the lag of GDP, and in addition to the lag of population growth. In addition, of course, to the change to complete the error correction model. After estimating this model to test the impact of those variables on the energy demand in the state of Qatar, we built the scenario-based forecast. And based on the energy consumption from now on until 2030, if we move based on that, CO2 emission will go up. This is why we have to do something for the transition period. We need to help the society by different options. We might convert the electricity generation to the renewable energy, or change the behavior of the people to decrease their energy consumption. Because if energy demand goes up, CO2 emission goes up based on the conversion rate. The second approach that we are using is the Augmented Questionnaire. Here are some questions that we are trying to answer from the Augmented Questionnaire. It is to know the behavior of the people. Do they understand their consumption of energy or not? So the questions that we are asking in this section is, are individuals systematically biased in their belief of energy use by residential energy technologies? We asked different questions about the technologies that they are using at home, the tools that they are consuming, the tools that are used for energy consumption, like refrigerators, air conditioning, TV, microwaves, and so on. And we asked them, how much is your belief about your energy consumption for each tool? The second question that we are trying to discover is, do individuals have accurate belief about their energy use? And the third question, how does these biases depend on the level of energy consumption? We compare their belief with the energy consumption from the data set that we have. Are they consistent with each other? Here, the approach that we are using is the lab experiment. It is to discover the most powerful nudge that might change the behavior of our people in energy consumption. We use the religious prime, or a verses from Quran, and we use the national identity prime as well, and see, does it matter or not? We classified the lab experiment people into 3 groups. Treatment group number 1, we exposed them to the religious prime. Treatment group number 2, we exposed them to the national identity prime, and the control group. We find that the nudge that we used has a significant impact on the behavior of the people for the charities. Then we have taken this note into the last part, which is the fourth approach, field experiments. Since the nudge matter, we have selected 3 areas in Qatar: Al-Wa'ab, the Pearl, and the Daphne. And we have selected 15,000 observations from our datasets that we have collected from Kahraman. Then we divided them into 3 groups. Treatment group number 1, we exposed them to the religious message to help people, or to support people, or to lead people, or to remind people to conserve energy. The second group is using national identity treatment, and this is the second group. And the third group is called control group. And we expose those 3 groups to this design 6 months, twice per month. It means that we have sent 12 message for group number 1, 12 message for group number 2 using SMS message, where the controlled group we didn't expose them to anything. It's using a randomized control trial in this case. What is the results? As we have mentioned, we have used four complementary approach. The first approach provides us an evidence that with the current level of economic activities and increasing GDP and increasing population rate, the energy demand will continue goes up. So we need to do something in this case. So the third point, the irrational behavior of the energy consumption might be as the reason, because we might be the highest country in electricity consumption per capita. Number 2, based on the models that we have built and scenario-based forecast, we find the following. If growth rate goes up, growth rate of GDP goes up by 2%, and the population growth goes up by 1%, which is the lowest level of growth, the energy consumption or electricity consumption in the state of Qatar will be doubled. Again, Qatar is a member of GCC countries, and what happened in Qatar most likely will be replicated in the rest of the GCC countries. So the electricity consumption will go up at the worst case scenario, at the lowest level of growth in GDP next 12 years. And population growth as the worst scenario will go up by 1%. It means that the electricity consumption will be doubled by 2031. So what should we do? We have to improve the efficiency of energy use or make a conservation for energy in Qatar. Because if we continue in this path, the CO2 emission will go up sharply. We have tested 5 scenarios, as you see. As the worst case scenario, it's case 5. 2% only increase in GDP, 1% only increase in the population rate. Energy demand will be doubled. And consequently, CO2 emissions will be doubled. What is the solution? There are different tools that we can use to reduce the CO2 emission and the energy consumption. If we improve the efficiency, electricity efficiency by only 5%, this will reduce the electricity consumption by 52% in the industrial segment, and by 42% in the commercial segment, by 27%, 14% for villa and apartments, and by 19% for hotels, 5% in government segment. Only if we improve the efficiency by 5%. All right. What about the behavior of the study of the behavior of the people? We find a strong evidence that there is a biasness between the belief of the people of their consumption and the actual consumption. So it might be a lack of awareness. It might be because of the subsidy policies that we have in the GCC countries. Qatar is no exception. Most of the GCC countries have a subsidized policy for the electricity use and so on. Our people in the GCC countries should be aware of the importance of the energy conservation. Also, from the lab experiment and the field experiment, we find the religious prime matter and our nudge effect on the energy consumption by 4% for a specific group, the high consumption group. Now, what is the recommendation? An integrated approach is necessary. I remember one of our colleagues in the previous session say, we have to act from today. We need an integrated system, an integrated approach. Behavioral approach, this is number 1. Number 2, technological approach. In fact, Qatar started and the lead of the GCC countries in both technological and behavioral approach. What is left? we need an energy policy reform. It means we need price reform, as using the evidence-based policy as well. Also, Qatar lead in law enforcement. So what is left? What is left is energy policy reform, combining those elements together as an integrated, comprehensive approach. We need to act from today. Number two, reframing the current efforts in Qatar's energy conservation program could improve the economic use of resources at Kahraman. The government of Qatar is very generous with the government institutions. Just one step needed is the auditing process for what is the outcome of each policy or each tool that we are using. If we use the behavioral approach, what is the outcome of that? So this is what is needed. Auditing is not financial auditing. I don't mean the financial auditing. I mean performance auditing. And this can be done by a committee at the highest level from academics and from the industry. We have to have an integration between the industry, real integration between the industry and the universities in the state of Qatar. We have to work in a harmonized way. What is the benefit of this approach? We have done a campaign for 6 months for the 3 areas using nudges. Number two, we have hired the research assistant and PhD students in this project. We have asked Kahraman to apply the evidence-based policy, and it's up to them at the end. And they are doing a great job in publicity and advertisement, but we need to apply the evidence-based policy approach in each step that they are doing. Publication. We have published some of the outcome of this research in energy policy 2020, and another paper as under review in energy economics, and one R&R in economics and policy for energy and the environment, and 2 big articles. One is pro-social because of the nudges, and the second one is about the field experiment is in process. They are in process. They are big articles. We did presentation and workshop at Qatar University, London School of Economics, Western Economic Association International, and Association of Environmental and Resource Economists. We have a PhD dissertation at Georgia State University, and the researcher is landed at London School of Economics based on the outcome of this research. The project was made possible by the generous support of Qatar National Research Fund, which is one of the best institutions in the globe nowadays. Thank you very much, and I'll be so happy to go in details about any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Khalifa. Yes, the award and the budget from QNRF was not, I think, generous. It was fine. It was the one you have to use in this project, because generosity, you know, it could mean something else. But I think the main idea here and the main novelty in this project is the introduction, is the use of individual behavior and how behaviors can also change, not only technology, and can help in this energy transition. So thank you for the idea, first of all, and also for all these results. And we will be back with some questions at the end.
Thank you.
Now I give the floor to Dr. Lanwar Sharfuddin. He's also from Qatar University, and he will talk about impact of ICTs and urbanization on environmental quality in Qatar. Dr. Lanwar Sharfuddin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Hatem. Thank you for the invitation. Good afternoon. Let me first thank you all for attending this session. The paper that I will present today is an outcome of a UREP project. The paper titled Impact of ICT and Urbanization on Environmental Quality in Qatar. The aim of this paper is to investigate whether we can improve environmental quality, which means reducing CO2 emission, for example, by investing on ICT and improving or adopting different strategy of urbanization. This paper, as I said, is an outcome of a Europe project, which is funded by Qatar Foundation, and it is co-authored by me as a mentor and 3 undergraduate students, Ms. Aisha Al-Thani, Yusra Hamana, and Ms. Asma Al-Ma'abid. As usually, disclaimer apply, and the view expressed here in this paper are those of the author and do not necessarily reflect the views of Qatar University or Qatar Foundation or their staff. The outline of this paper is as follows. First, I will present the rationale behind this study. Second, I will present the data and the econometric model used to investigate our research question. After that, I will present the result and discuss the main result. I will also, after that, I will present the significance and provide some policy implications. Finally, I will conclude and present the outcomes of this, let's say, mini project. It's a Europe project. It's not NPRP project, but we have already some outcomes and participation in conferences, etc. The goal and objectives of this project, the aim of this project is to investigate, as I said, the effect of information communication technologies, ICTs, and urbanization on the quality of the environment in Qatar. Precisely regarding the objectives of this paper, we will investigate, or we will try to answer the following questions. The first is that can ICT and urbanization can be used, or can we adopt urban strategies that can improve the quality of the environment in Qatar? Then in our model, which is based on a theoretical model, where we introduce, where we can test this hypothesis that we call the environmental Kuznets curve hypothesis, and we will try to investigate, we will see if this hypothesis holds for the case of Qatar. And then we will see which energy and environmental policies are to be recommended to help reducing environmental degradation in Qatar. Regarding the rationale for about this study, as you know, improving the quality of the environment and reducing the level of CO2 emission and greenhouse gases emission in general are among the top challenges that faces the Qatar state. Precisely, there are several reasons that motivate us to investigate this research question. The first is that over the last 10-15 years, in terms of CO2 per capita or ecological footprint, Qatar is ranked in the top of the 5 countries, similar to most of the GCC countries. Also, Qatar is highly related, or there is a high reliance of the Qatar economy on hydrocarbon resources. High, as I said, high level also of local air pollution like SO2, NOx, etc. And also there is Qatar is characterized by high rapid increase in population and energy consumption, and also there are many and several important deadlines, including the World Cup 2022, the Qatar National Vision 2030, and the policymakers in Qatar, they adopt many strategies in order to improve environmental quality, which is generally proxied by CO2 emission, because here 92% of environmental degradation comes from CO2 emission, and the rest is from land and water pollution. So the big problem here is more related to CO2 emission. The Qatari policymakers, as I said, have made from this objective one of the country top priorities. For instance, 3 out of the 4 pillars of Qatar National Vision 2030 are directly or indirectly related to how to improve the quality of the environment in Qatar. Also, the most of the Qatar national research strategies are linked to how to improve the environment, how to improve energy efficiency and energy conservation. And also there are the Qatar state has implemented several initiatives in order to improve environmental quality by using new technologies, by promoting new technologies, smart urbanization and smart cities. And as an example, we have Lusail City and Msherib City, for example. Regarding the literature review, theoretically, there are many theories that are based that we can use to investigate the first nexus in our study, which is between urbanization and environmental degradation. The first one is the urban environmental transition theory, which suggests here a negative relationship between urbanization and environmental degradation. Then we have the compact city theory and the ecological modernization theory, and both of them are more positively, in general, high level of urbanization is associated with an improvement in the quality of the environment. The second nexus that we will investigate in this, we investigated in this paper, is the relationship or the ICT environmental degradation nexus. And here there are three theories, or three theories, let's say. The first one is the first order effect, and here it's a negative relationship, positive relationship between ICT and environmental degradation, which means that the use of new equipment or the production of the new equipment, it will destroy the quality of the environment. The second order effect here, it states a negative relationship between ICT and environmental degradation, which means that the adoption and the use of ICT it will improve the quality of the environment, which means it will reduce CO2 emission. And the third one is the rebound effect, and here it's another type where the effect, it will be in the first stage it will be positive and then negative. Regarding in the empirical studies, for both nexus, urbanization, environmental degradation, and also ICT environmental degradation, there is now consensus about the evidence for a specific result, which is valid for all countries or for different type or over the same over different periods, etc. The result seems to depend on the group of countries, developed versus developing, the sample of the sample period used, the proxy of environmental degradation or ICT or urbanization, and also the econometric model used in general. In this paper, the data is, we will use, three proxies for environmental degradation. The first one is more general, which is ecological footprint, and which take into consideration three aspects of pollution. The first one is air pollution, land pollution, and also water pollution. It is a sort of global proxy of environmental degradation. And then we use carbon footprint and CO2 emission that are related to air pollution in general. Regarding the independent variable, we use a real GDP per capita. We use two proxies introduced separately for ICT. The first one is mobile subscription per 100 people, and the second one is internet users per 100 people. Regarding the urbanization, we use also two proxies. The first one is urban population divided by the total population, and the second one is population density. Two proxies of energy use are used: electricity and the total energy use per capita. Our period cover, our sample cover the period from 1975 to 2016 for annual data, and for quarterly data from 1990 to 2016. Our theoretical model, our model of specification is based on the model that we call the stir-path model, and here we have this relationship which is given by IT divided by PT. IT, it's the impact, and the impact in general, it corresponds to CO2 emission or ecological footprint, etc. And P, it's the population. A, B, and C are parameters that we will estimate later on using our econometric model. And we have two other variables, AT, capital AT, and TT. AT, it represents affluence. Here we will use real GDP, and we have the technology. And UT, it's in stochastic error term. After introducing a logarithm in this equation and augmenting this equation by logarithm of GDP squared, and also ICT and urbanization and energy use, we come to this new model, new specification equation one, where the signs of beta 1 and beta 2 can inform us about the type of the relationship between GDP and environmental degradation, and it will inform us precisely whether the ECAC hypothesis holds or not. Beta 3 is a measure of the impact of energy use on environmental degradation. Beta 4, impact of ICT, our main variable, one of our variable of interest. And beta 5, the impact of urbanization on environmental degradation. We proceed as in many articles. First, we test for stationarity, and all the variables should be not stationary to find a long-run relationship. We use the Gregory and Ansen 1996 and Hatimi G 2008 technique to investigate, to test whether there is a long-run relationship between these variables. And here, this method or this technique allow to take into consideration the existence of break point. Finally, we estimate the long-run relationship and short-run relationship, but here we will focus only on the long-run relationship, which it will inform us, and we can use it to test our hypothesis. This is the variable that we have used. The first graph, it represents the CO2 emission, total ecological footprint, and carbon footprint. And as you can see, starting from 1961, after discovering oil and gas in Qatar, the level of CO2 emission, it becomes very high compared to the period just before, and it increases overall over time. Same behavior, we can see it for the two proxies of ICT mobile, the second graph, mobile subscription and internet users. And also we have an increase in the population density and the urban population as a percentage of total population in the third graph. To start quickly, we report the correlation analysis, and here you can see that we find a positive relationship between ICT and ecological footprint, which means that an ICT increase ecological footprint, it destroy the quality of the environment. But for CO2 emission and carbon footprint, we find that there is a negative relationship, which means that ICT improve the level, reduce CO2 emission and carbon footprint. And similar think similar result we find it for the two proxies of urbanization. Then when we estimate our model, we find that as you can see here, all the coefficients are overall significant at 1%, except, for example, the dummy variable, which is 19. We have a structural break in 1998, and which is significant at 1%, and it is identified. This one, it is identified by the unit root test with structural break. And here, as you can see, because of here the coefficient before associated to logarithm of GDP is positive, and coefficient associated to logarithm of GDP squared is negative. This means that the inverted relationship, there is an inverted relationship between logarithm of GDP and CO2 emission, which means that the ECAC hypothesis holds, and this is valid for CO2 emission, carbon footprint, but not for ecological footprint. We find that energy use destroy the quality of the environment. For the three proxies, whatever is it, CO2 emission, carbon footprint, or ecological footprint, we find that mobile subscription is negatively associated with CO2 emission and carbon footprint, but positively associated with ecological footprint, which means that ICT improve the quality of the environment when we are considering air pollution, because CO2 emission and carbon footprint are proxies of air pollution, but ecological footprint, as I said, it's more global proxy because it takes into consideration land pollution and water pollution. And for urbanization, we find that it is for the three cases, for the three proxies, it destroys the quality of the environment. This is the main result that I have already presented. Then regarding the significance and policy application, the result of this project have allowed to identify key variables that can be used to propose better policies to improve the quality of the environment in Qatar. What we recommend is the following. First, we recommend to continue to investing in ICT, as here in our case, the second order effect holds. Encourage consumer to use ICT to accelerate the effect, this second order effect, increase the awareness about its social negative effect, so to avoid the problem associated with the third effect, which is the rebound effect. Also, we recommend to encourage smart urbanization through, for example, smart cities in order to reduce CO2 emission. And finally, we recommend to promote research and development and to new technologies. These are the conclusion. We have two conclusions. The first one is the results show that ICT can be used to reduce CO2 emission and carbon footprint, but degrade the level of ecological footprint, but it is here significant only at 10%, which means that in general is in social science we use 5%. Also, we find also that the impact of urbanization on environmental degradation depends on the ED proxy used. Regarding the post project plan, finalize and submit the in progress paper for publication in high-ranked journal. I have already published articles in other Europe projects in very high quality journal like Renewable and Sustainable Energy Review with a Europe project in 2016 or 17, and I think we will be able, with the quality of the result that we get in this project, to publish a good paper. And I will continue with the team to work and try to submit for NPRP or other type of project. This project has several important achievements and outcomes. We have conference participation in the Qatar Green Building International Conference in 2018, Sheraton Doha 2018. We have published a research magazine article in December 2019 in Arabic and in English in the QU Research Magazine, volume 12. It is impact of ICT diffusion and on environmental quality in Qatar. It's more public oriented than research oriented. Also, Ms. Yusra Hamana and Ms. Asma Al-Mahadid they have been interviewed with Oryx FM radio about the outcomes of the project. It's French radio in Qatar. We get an acceptance to present our paper in progress at the World Conference of Undergraduate Students 2019, but we haven't participated to. It's not. Then we have also submitted the final report of this project, and it was accepted and completed. Acknowledgement, all the team members of this Europe project would like to thank Qatar National Qatar Foundation for their continuous support.
Thank you, Dr. Lanwar. Thank you also, because despite the fact that you are in your annual leave now, you accepted to participate in this ROS. I give the floor now to Dr. Antonio Sanfilippo, who is Chief Scientist in Qatar Environment and Energy Research Institute here in Qatar. Dr. Antonio, the floor is yours. Please, 15 minutes, because, you know.
Good afternoon, and actually good evening now at this point. And thank you for having us in this very topical and distinctive event. I'm going to talk about the result of an NPRP project that was concluded last year. And let me start with some motivations from this project, which is about modeling the adoption of residential PV. So because of the price of PV going down, PV is basically de facto the main driver in the journey towards carbon neutrality. In fact, if you look at the statistics, and that's the graph on the upper left, upper right of the slide, you can see that in the last 4 years, well, up until 2019, and probably even after, solar PV has been the fastest growing renewable energy. Qatar has plans to exceed 20% reliance on solar PV for power generation by 2030. And currently, most of these efforts are focused on utility PV. As you probably have heard about the Siraj 800 megawatt PV plant in Al-Qarsa, which will be coming online at the end of this year. But an important thing is that distributed PV generation is needed to achieve the PV adoption goal. And for a number of reasons. First of all, distributed PV generation is needed to support demand response, to curtail cost for the upgrade of infrastructure investment in the national power grid by reducing reliance on the grid during times of peak consumption, which in Qatar are very predictable, as you can see in the graph in the lower right of the slide. The peak consumption typically occurs in summer afternoon. Increase modularity and resiliency of the national power system. That's another important point about distributed PV generation. Enable microgrids which operate at the direct current voltage. And that has two benefits. First of all, you avoid losses from having to convert from DC to AC, to alternating current. And then it's safer because humans have lower vulnerability to direct current. So the point is that Qatar and other GCC countries have significantly different socioeconomic environment, compared to countries and regions of the world where there is a lot of distributed PV generation. So it's important to design the right policies and to regulate the adoption of PV. So in this regard, the objective of this project was to provide a decision support platform to help stakeholders understand the impact of policy on the adoption of solar PV in Qatar, and obviously countries that have similar geopolitical conditions. So methodologically, we we started by using agent-based modeling, so social simulation, to evaluate residential PV adoption across households in Qatar under diverse conditions. And these conditions are determined by home ownership status. And that's important because, as most of you know, in Qatar, citizens do not pay for electricity, so there's no tariff. Falling cost of PV, reduction of electricity subsidies, so there are a lot of subsidies for electricity, and also fossil fuel use for electricity production. That's true of many other countries in the GCC. Introduction of carbon tax, the diffusion of renewable energy innovation, and then finally power gains resulting from the use of PV energy so behind the meter. Now, on top of this, we developed a multi-criteria decision analysis component whose purpose is basically to assess the impact of the different factors, and then implemented a web-enabled decisions platform to make available the models and MCDA components to everyone who's interested. Now, towards the end of the project, and this is something that we're continuing to work on now, we developed a web-enabled application to estimate the PV potential of rooftop in Qatar. And then we started to develop a transactive energy blockchain platform to evaluate peer-to-peer PV energy trade in Qatar. So I'll go very quickly through each of these components to give you a flavor of what has been done. So the agent-based model essentially uses social simulation and a logistic function to assess the propensity of households to adopt PV. And the most important thing is that the deciding factor is the cost of PV, obviously, to which a number of elements can occur to essentially lower the negative effect of PV cost. You know, carbon tax, the reduction of electricity subsidies, and so on and so forth. And the results, and this is work that we published in the Renewable Energy Journal, we found out that PV adoption is strongly influenced by the falling cost of PV, no surprises there, the reduction of electricity subsidies, and the extension of electricity tariff to Qatari households. Now, we also found that carbon tax can also accelerate PV adoption, but only if it's above $8 per metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent. So the next step was to assess the impact of innovation diffusion, and to do that, we created a kind of an integrated network of households and Twitter posting. And you can do this because Twitter posts are geo-coded, so you can kind of put them the two together. And then we use Barabasi scale-free network generation with linear threshold spreading to see how the innovation about renewable energy technology spread. And then we use these factors we integrated in the agent-based model to see how what would be the impact. And there is a slight impact, especially towards the end of the simulation. The next step was to try to understand how power loss impacts on adoption. And the basic idea here is that if you have PV on top of your house, and you can use it behind the meter, or you can put it in the main grid. And obviously, when you put it in the main grid, it has to travel to the substation to be distributed. And in this transition, obviously, there is some energy that gets lost. And you can see there the kind of equation that calculates that. Now we ran that for about 60,536 homes on the assumption that they will have a 5 kilowatt PV system, and you know, the yearly loss is about 7 gigawatt. And then what we did, we quantified that in terms of kilowatt hour cost, and we integrated it into the agent-based model for adoption, and we found that you know, on average, the power gain which results from using the PV behind the meter, you know, gives you about 1.2, 1.3 additional adoption, and that's shown in the graph on the right side at the bottom. For the MCDA, what we did basically, you know, once you have the agent-based model, you can generate essentially data. These are fictitious data, but they are data that are generated on sound assumption, realistic data about prices, market prices, in people's response. And from the data, you can derive, you know, using machine learning techniques, you can derive a Bayesian classifier, which essentially tells you how the different factor impact on adoption, and then run sensitivity analysis on the Bayesian classifier to quantify the impact. The interesting thing here about the Bayesian classifier is that you can play with it by changing the weights manually to see how impacts the different factor impact differently. And we implemented a web platform which is available on the web that basically can be used to play what-if games in terms of adoption of PV. Now, moving forward, and that was not initially in the plan of the NPRP, but it was the next logical step. We developed a platform that enables the estimation of rooftop PV, and as you can see in the picture there, and we developed that initially for education CD. And the interesting about this is that you can focus on a rooftop and then play around with within maximum capacity and maximum return. Obviously, now, if you want to have maximum capacity, your return will be a little bit less because certain areas might be somewhat shaded and will be less productive. And the interface will provide you all the details about system-specific, technical, financial, and environmental details. Finally, the transactive energy blockchain is something that we've been working the last year, and it's also the topic of a new NPRP, which is about to start. And here what we're doing, we are creating a social simulation, and this is necessary because, you know, we don't have the PV system to do the trading yet. And but one way to make this realistic is to link the agent, which are households, to smart meters, which we have installed in Education CD. So you can essentially see how much each agent, each household can trade without other households. And we do have a 5 kilowatt PV system installed in the education community house and compound. So we do have data that can be used in the simulation to make it more realistic. Okay, so this is my last slide. I understand I'm the last speaker here, so we want to get going. So, well, in terms of outcome, well, you know, we're providing here the first model of residential PV adoption in Qatar, the first tool estimating PV capability in Qatar, the rooftop PV capability in Qatar, and the first energy blockchain application, which is currently under development. We've published extensively on this work, and we'll be glad to share any this work with anyone who's interested. We've had also quite a bit of impact with working with stakeholder. Karama, the country electricity and water distribution company, has been a partner with us since the beginning of the PV modeling adoption work, and now in the new NPRP project on energy blockchain. We've also been working with the Qatar Financial Center and the HBKU College of Islamic Studies to develop a green sukuk for community solar. And green sukuk, as many of you know, a sukuk, as many of you know, is basically a Sharia compliant investment channel, like a bond or some sort. And we are basically designing such investment program to facilitate the adoption of community solar, which is basically residential and commercial. Then we recently started to work with the Qatar Foundation capital projects to plan additional rooftop PV installations in Education City. And here we are making use of our rooftop PV estimation tool to make such planning. So the next step is to bring the PV adoption application, the web application I was showing before, as a prototype, to bring it to maturity so we can make it available publicly. Extend the rooftop PV estimation application to all of Doha and other urban areas in Qatar. Link the energy blockchain to smart meters, I was saying before, in Education City, so as to be able to carry out realistic social simulations of peer-to-peer energy trading, and then continue to work with the Karama, Qatar Financial Center, HBKU, College of Islamic Study, Qatar Foundation Central Project, and other stakeholders in Qatar to realize solar PV applications. And this is all for me. Thank you.
Grazie mille, Dr. Sanfilippo.
Prego, piacere mio.
Yes, it's very informative, and I think we have to give more space and more time to our projects to be presented in details, and give them also the space to respond to question. I didn't see any question in the chat here, but I have some, and in the same time, we are running out of time, so I will pose some question for each of you, rapid question, and I ask for rapid response also. For Dr. Antonio Sanfilippo, what are the 2 or 3 main reasons that impeded the expansion and adoption of solar energy in the region, in your point of view? And are these reasons still economically valid?
Yes, that's very good and interesting question. One of the main problems here is subsidies. You have electricity subsidies, and you have subsidies to the fuel, the fossil fuel that is used to generate electricity. So you have a double whammy. So it's difficult to level the field for renewable energy. Still, it's as you might have seen, the last offer for the to tender to a Saudi plant for 600 megawatt was 0.1 cents a kilowatt hour. So subsidies or no subsidies, I think solar energy is going to happen. I think the problem for distributed PV generation is a little different because, you know, obviously it's more expensive, on average twice as much as utility PV.
Okay, thank you. For Dr. Lanwa Sharfuddin, I'm still a bit perplexed when I hear that using more mobile phone and internet or living in a smart city will ameliorate the quality of the environment. For example, we know that energy or electricity consumption is probably higher in a smart city than in a normal, between brackets, one. So how do you explain this result that you found, that using more ICT will improve use of
Thank you for the question. In general, yes, you are right. We use more energy, but in general, what happened is that the gain will be higher than the gain in terms of when we use ICT. There is a gain there is conservation. There is a gain, and this gain it will exceed the loss in terms of using more energy. That's why in the second rebound effect, because we have three effects. First order effect, which is related in general to, it is for countries that produce equipment related to ICT, and this the waste of this, for example, this equipment, it will destroy the quality of the environment. It's when using only the use of energy, it will we will conserve, we will reduce the energy use, and then it will reduce CO2 emission and air pollution in general. But the problem is when we go to the rebound effect, and this because when we use more energy, when we use ICT, we will reduce the energy use, but this gain, the problem that we will use more ICT, and this in general, what it happens is that we will move this because of this gain, we will use more ICT, and then it will happen that the level of energy used, it will exceed the initial level of energy, which means that by the end we will have this rebound effect, which in general we will finish by having more CO2 emission. We will not reduce. So the second one, it's let's say it's the best, because we will have a negative relationship between CO2 emission or environmental degradation in general and the use of ICT.
Yeah, I know. The other problem is the fact that you find that the AKC hypothesis is validated.
Yeah.
But I know that in many papers, including mine, we didn't find for any Arabic countries that this hypothesis is validated. So
yeah.
Probably the specification of your model helped to validate.
Yeah, maybe because we use
the result. Now for Dr. Ahmed Khalifa, the main value added in your project is the idea to look to individual behavior. But at the same time, what can we retain from your result in terms of policy recommendation, apart the fact that we have to suggest that we have to ask the future advertising or awareness campaign on some religious aspects? What can we retain?
Thank you, Dr. Hatem, for this question. We believe that behavioral intervention matter, because at the end, the residents, they are the people who are using the technology and they are using the energy. So Number one is a continuous communication with the residents using useful message. This is number one. Number two, evidence-based policy. It means that we need to measure or estimate the impact of each action taken for promoting the energy efficiency. What we have in the state of Qatar, they are doing a great job in using different tools without measuring the impact of each tool. So it's product efforts, but no conclusion. For example, Kahruma used something called high consumption message. They are sending a message or nudges for those who are exceeding a specific threshold for high consumption group. What is the impact? They didn't measure the impact. So I have taken the data and did run very quick estimation, and I found that the message has zero impact. So in this case, they choose the wrong message. This is number one. Number two, they don't do they don't revise the message in this case. So the importance of what we have done is telling the people, measuring the impact of each message that you are running. This is number one. And select and continue on the best message that has an impact. It might be a religious message. It might be a warning. It might be attractive message, like one of the messages that has a great impact, for example, in Kahruma, is so Kahruma paid the electricity bill for you. Please conserve the energy use. So this is for Qatari people. Some people feel it has an impact. Some people feel I'm guilty if I'm consuming more. So in this case, this message has a great impact at the end. So they might continue on this level. For the high consumption group message, it didn't have any impact. They don't know that. So I was curious to measure the impact. I've collected the data and I ran the estimation, and I found it has zero impact. So there is some messages has a great impact. There is some nudges has a great impact. There is some religious prime has a great impact. We need to select the right message. This is number one. Number two, continuation matter. It is not just one message and gone. The people, by evidence, the people will forget the message after 3 months. So it means awareness should continue, continuous awareness campaign. This is number one. Number two, the technology matter. The state of Qatar take a great measure of restricting the imported technology for in Qatar. So they put restriction on imported high consumption electricity of AC, or they added something called green label. Number two, they restricted the imports of lights, of some kind of lights, and they restricted the imports only for the LED light. This is another point of the technology.
Okay.
Number three is energy reform. This should be accompanied with. So as I mentioned, Dr. Hatem, integrated approach matter.
Thank you, Dr. Khalifa. Couple of questions for Dr. Ahmed Badran or his team, one of his team. Should climate negotiation be focused on burden sharing issues? And what is the importance of sharing the safety cumulative emissions budget in the design of fair climate regime? Dr. Badran, it is for you or one of your team here.
Okay, thank you very much. I will pass actually this question to one of my colleagues, either Maxime or Mark, just to reflect more. But I think some of the results that we have come up with basically is suggesting that having this kind of fair burden sharing when it comes to the negotiation, especially if we consider the amount of the unburnable fossil fuel that will be left in the GCC countries that cannot be touched or used because of the restrictions, the environmental restrictions. So now I'll pass it to Mark or Maxime if you want to give us like a detailed account on this issue. Please go ahead.
Okay, maybe I can start, Mark. Maxime Shenkeri, and I'm really happy to be part of this conversation. Specifically on this question, it's really one of the key questions that started this research project on what will be the economics of different kind of agreement, COP agreement, and how can we model them in order to see what would be the cost for each of the main regions in the world, and especially the GCC country. So when we go through the different way to kind of share the burden between the different countries in terms of carbon emission, well, it appears that the best way, in fact, to do it is through a Rawlsian rule. It's kind of sharing the cost equally among all the participants in the world economy. And in this case, it means that, GCC country will have kind of the best deal within, I would say, the international COP agreement. What is interesting to look at that, it means that the kind of consequence of such economic quantification of this rule is that it enables countries to see what would be the best path for them to negotiate with the other people. And so that way it also gives them some clue here, as they need to be in the climate negotiation. The time to say, okay, we are out, we don't want to talk about that, or we don't want to talk about carbon pricing, etc. All the result of the study shows that you need to be there, because else you will have another rule that will apply to you, and then it will not be the best rule for you. So that was part of my answer. If Mark or Ahmed, you would like to add more?
Nothing to add from my side. Margiel speaking, so perfect answer, I think.
Thank you, Dr. Mark. Yes, thank you all for being here and for your presentation, and for also being and respond to our questions. I call Dr. Mustafa now for the wrap-up. If you are here, Dr. Mustafa.
Yes, Dr. Hatem, yes, I'm here. Waiting
okay. For us, you know, for QNRF and for me, for our pillar, social science, arts and humanity, I think that this event is very fruitful and informative. What can I say? I think that I can formulate some hope, you know, when we came to the end of the event. And my hope is that our researcher here in the Qatar ecosystem try to propose some new ideas, you know, in their proposals related to energy transitions, and probably, between brackets, go off the beaten track. I noted many topics, very interesting, and in reality, we are not receiving many projects and competitive projects in this topic. I noted carbon markets and you know, Dr. Mustafa, the first idea about this event, it was about carbon markets, circular economy, energy transition and inclusion, the cost of the energy transition, the direct and indirect cost of the energy transition for Qatar and other GCC countries. You know, we have here 3 economists at this, and they are probably able to do this kind of work. Climate neutrality, decarbonization of energy sector, also the idea of to link the post-COVID-19 with innovation in the energy sector, what you call the green COVID-19 recovery. I think it was cited by one of the guest speakers. Also the climate law. This is a topic we can say that researcher must be the first to study this topic before ministries or because we need, you know, benchmarking. We need to have a quite close look to what happened in the other countries. So this is my feeling at the end of this event. We have so many topics to be proposed to our researcher here in Qatar, and we need a rapid response from them to provide us with some solution and recommendation, like the 4 projects that we had now. What do you think, Dr. Mustafa?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you wrap up very well, you know, the entire webinar. I think I agree with you in all your thoughts and your points. Very valid, as we heard a lot of insight from our esteemed speakers. I think the discussion, it was very fruitful indeed, useful for us, for all the participants, and we exchanged a lot of information about the situation in the EU, in the GCC, in Qatar. I think the discussion also opened the door for many in-depth, you know, discussion for some specific topic. I pointed out on the policy and regulations, and you have also the strategy, the roadmaps. That is, I think, the key driver for the energy transition. The energy transition, as you mentioned, it has to be inclusive, not focusing only in the energy sector. That is, I think, the point, you know, that we have to highlight, because if we don't decarbonize the other sectors, I'm not sure that we can reach the Paris Agreement or the zero, you know, carbon emission by 2050, because we have the industry sector, we have the business sector that they are emitting, and we are, you know, as Gauri said, we are far behind, you know, the target. So maybe we have to focus on some specific sectors in the building sectors, industry. The transport also is not really going forward with the right speed. We are looking for EVs, we are looking for the smart mobility, but still we have to do a lot of effort on this sector. So also on this segment, some market segment, for example, for the medium and small and medium size projects, this is a lack of understanding, but also a lack of policies and regulations. On the rooftop, for example, there are many countries that they have embraced, you know, those regulations recently. UAE, Oman, also Saudi, but other countries in the MENA region, for example, and the Arab countries, they don't believe, or they don't have, you know, the courage to go, because maybe the markets is not there, but they have to create the market. And this is, I think, very important, because with the small and medium-sized projects, we can create SMEs, we can create added value, we can create jobs. Looking just for this utility scale project, in my opinion, we have to diversify, and we have to look all the opportunities that the clean energy and technology, because the clean technology, solar, wind, all those renewable energies, they are modulable, they are flexible, and you can see in all the applications that we can use them. So maybe we have to try also to have some interest, you know, on those aspects. And I think mobilizing, you know, all the research, mobilizing also the key stakeholders in a country or in the region, that can also facilitate, because we cannot also duplicate, we can also avoid overlapping. That needs, you know, cooperation, and it's one of the aspects of this workshop is to have this interaction with Europe, interaction with the GCC, with the MENA region countries, learn from each other, and have, you know, a better understanding of the challenges, and came up with some solutions and opportunities that benefit all of us.
Thank you, Dr. Mustafa. I don't know if Mr. Frank Wouters, I can give you the floor for concluding remarks if you are hearing us.
Maybe he's busy, or maybe
probably.
Yes.
So if he's busy, we can conclude now. And thank for all the participants, more than 100, more than 200 registered, and also for the 43 participants who's now with us at more than 3,500. We thank you very much, and we hope to meet with you in another occasion this year or next year. And thanks for EU-GCC also for their kind help and for their magnificent logistic. And also thank you, Alice, for all what you did for this, for the organization of this.
You're all welcome.
Webinar.
Thank you also for the collaboration.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hatem, for your close cooperation throughout the process, and thanks to all our esteemed speakers for the time, the availability for this, their insightful presentations, and also the participants. And sorry we didn't have time, you know, to look to their questions. But I'm sure that we will have, you know, another occasion to discuss and interact more with them. Thank you very much, and see you.
Inshallah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.